The time now is 6:03 p.m., and this meeting is hereby called to order. We have the presence of a quorum attending in person. Notice of this meeting has been posted online and at the Fort Bend ISD Administration Building for at least 72 hours. The first on the agenda is National Anthem performed by Clements High School String Quartet. Please join me, stand up to have the National Anthem. Thank you for the performance, and this reminds us why we're here. And so now please join me remaining standing, and we'll have a moment of silence. You may be seated. Thank you. Next, we have recognition. Mrs. Smith, please take over.
Okay. Thank you, Board President Ms. Day. As the students are coming back in, I'd just like to remark how beautiful that performance was this evening. We had tonight's national anthem was by a quartet with Clements High School students. And hopefully they're on their way back. It does take a little transition to get their instruments stored away. 1 minute. So here they are. Come on through. We have making up the quartet for this evening's national anthem performance. We have Natalia Camelo, Julia Song, Emma Liang, and Emily Effendi. They are led by directors Neil Springer and Sally Kirk. Thank you so much for your beautiful performance. To kick off this evening's recognitions, I would like to invite Mr. Mike Madden, Coordinator of Student Leadership Enrichment Opportunities, to come to the podium to announce the first recognition.
Board President Day, members of the board, Dr. Whitbeck, it is my honor to be given this opportunity to recognize the following Fort Bend ISD students who advanced from the Houston Regional Science and Engineering Fair to the Texas State Engineering Fair. From there, 3 students advanced to the International Science and Engineering Fair. First place in System Software from Travis High School, Rohan Daria and Vidit Mehta, who also advanced to the International Science and Engineering Fair. Second place in biochemistry from Quail Valley Middle School, Jia Joshi, Sporthi Maram, and Anvesha Samramrianan. Please help us once again congratulate these outstanding students and their incredible accomplishments in science. Thank you.
Next with us this evening, we have Ms. LaDonna Green. She serves as the Wellness, Health, and Prevention Specialist. She will announce our next recognition.
Hello. Tonight we are proud to recognize the students who placed first, second, or third in the Destination Imagination State Tournament and were honored at the Global Tournament for Exceptional Achievements. The Destination Imagination competition offers open-ended academic challenges that are sparking to students' creativity in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, fine arts, and service learning. First, we recognize the Mechanical Cheetahs of Settlers Way, awarded first place in the elementary level engineering challenge. Shahir Azim, Ayan Dedhi, Nikhil Arukala, Raghav Pandaranji, Dev Sidhir, and Neil Tyagi, with team managers Rashmi Pandaranji and Mariah Dedhi. The Mechanical Cheetahs were awarded third place at the global final competition. Thank you, Mechanical Cheetahs. Next, we would like to recognize Sixth Dimension of Dulles High School, Quail Valley Middle School, and Satarsha Middle School, awarded first place in the Senior Level Engineering Challenge, with team members Rishabh Agarwal, Ritik Agarwal, Emily Chan, Ansu Javeri, Aro Shah, and Shavani Sundarmurthy, with team managers Jagisha Doshi and Linda Christensen. Sixth Dimension was awarded 11th place at global competition. Next, we recognize the Indestructibles of Cornerstone Elementary, awarded second place in the elementary level technical challenge, with team members Prisha Dave, Sanjana Ganglani, Aaron Mehta, Ayush Patwa, Arbi Thoda, and Agastya Varma, with team managers Kamala Kar Thoda and Tejas Mehta and Vandana Padma Rao Yarla. The Indestructibles were awarded 8th place at the global competition. Next, we recognize Team Radicals of Dulles High School, Clements High School, Satartia Middle School, and they were awarded second place in the Service Learning Challenge. Team Radicals was awarded 5th place at global competition, with team members Sachi Jain, Vivian Cade, and Ronald Shah, with team manager Jagisha Doshi. Next, we recognize the Sullivan 7 of Sullivan Elementary School, awarded 4th place in the elementary level Fine Arts Challenge, and Sullivan 7 was also awarded 8th place at global competition, with team members Alyssa Charan Ratanaruk, Austin Fong, Madison Fong, Yuki Hoda, Ayan Kamani, Mina Liu, and Talia Taranis, with team manager Susan Gamble Fong. Thank you.
Thank you, LaDonna, and congratulations on all those high-achieving students. Next, we have Kempner High School teacher, Dr. Alicia Adkins. She has been selected as a recipient of the 2023 Outstanding Teacher of Humanities Award. This award recognizes exemplary contributions of humanities teachers in Texas schools. Dr. Adkins will receive $5,000 in recognition of her achievements. And Kempner High School will receive $1,000 to purchase humanities instructional materials for humanities courses and programs. Congratulations. Thank you for your dedication. Next up, we have, for the first time, the Fort Bend ISD Materials Management Team has been awarded the 2023 Achievement of Excellence in Procurement Award by the National Purchasing Institute. FBISD is only one of 17 school districts in the nation to receive this recognition. The Purchasing Department receives this award for demonstrating excellence in procurement processes, innovation, professionalism, productivity, and leadership. Please welcome Director of Materials Management, Doris Amica. Senior Buyers, Kathleen Booker and Antoinette Lewis. Buyers, Lisa Bryant, April Mitchell Cooper, Amber Reese, and Tracy Alexander. Junior buyers, Claire Taylor and Zaylord Bautista. Purchasing specialist, Jandra Johnson. May or may not be here. Also recognizing Manager, Administrative Support Materials Management, Diane Salinas, and Executive Assistant, Cristiana Armijo. Congratulations. Next, but definitely not least, we have Charlotte O'Callaghan, a student at Austin High School who attended the Girls State program at Texas Lutheran University, sponsored by the American Legion. Charlotte learned about local, county, and state government. As part of the program, Charlotte wrote and submitted a bill, which was one of 5 presented in the Texas Senate when the Girls State program visited the Capitol. Charlotte was able to give a speech about her bill on the Texas Senate floor, and it passed through the Girls State legislature. I also have to say that Charlotte plays on my daughter's water polo team. She's a goalie, and she's also a softball player. This concludes tonight's recognitions. Thank you.
We're so proud of all those kids and their teachers. So now we have superintendent update. Dr. Wayback, please.
Thank you. Well, we have open school, and it's exciting in Fort Bend ISD. We have completed 9 days of the brand-new school year. I know I've been out and about at campuses, as has our team, and I know many board members as well. So I'll start with day 1, Crawford. Our new high school is the first students ever arrived on campus. There they are, excited, ready to go. At Sonal Butcher, they welcomed their very first students with a red carpet, a bubble machine, and all kinds of fanfare. But the most special thing of all was that Sonal Butcher's family was there, and you can see them by her portrait on the wall. Ridge Point opened with 2,900 students. When I was there, the halls were clear and you could hear a pin drop. And it was only just a few hours into the day. At Elkins, the animal science and JROTC students were ready to get the year started, and it's always a great day to be a Knight. Over at Highlands Elementary, the kids were all smiles as they studied math and science, and the teachers were too. And I want to recognize the child nutrition staff at Colony Meadows. They were so welcoming to the children on the first day as they served them breakfast and lunch. Let's check out a short video of our very first day in Fort Bend.
Who are we? SCAM. Who are we? SCAM. Good morning. Happy birthday, school. Good morning. Happy birthday, school.
Everybody's excited, so we are too. Fabulous.
Yes, all the bubbles was made by Sun Gilmore.
It's like an NFL game.
And we are off to a great start. Want to also offer congratulations to 5 Fort Bend ISD football players shown on the screen. They are from Hightower, Marshall, and Ridge Point, and they have been named to the Touchdown Club 2023 high school preseason team. They were chosen for their success on the field, but also in the classroom. Fort Bend ISD has earned a Texas Educational Theater Association Award of Distinction, which is at the outstanding level for its commitment to theatrical excellence. The organization also recognized the district's dedication to the educational growth of its students. I'm so proud of the staff that trains and inspires our students on and off the stage. So congratulations to all of the Fort Bend ISD Fine Arts staff. And thank you today for recognizing our procurement department. I did want to mention them again because I have a clarification. I've received a letter from the National Procurement Institute stating that not only did our district win the 2023 Achievement of Excellence Award for the U.S., but for Canada as well. So that means out of 194 international organizations in the U.S. and Canada, our procurement department is one of the very best. I want to extend a hearty congratulations to the entire procurement team for doing outstanding work. Recently, they were awarded at the state level, and now they're recognized at a national and international level. Congratulations. And the last item warms my heart. We have a new Fort Bend ISD police officer named Pearl Juarez. She is sworn in last Monday by Chief Ryder. It has been a lifelong dream of hers to become a police officer. After years of working to become qualified and complete the training, she made it. Officer Juarez had been an office clerk for 5 years at Willow Ridge High School. She chose to be sworn in there in front of the students and staff. Her husband pinned the badge on her. And an extra bonus, she's also a Hightower High School alum. What a great example of our motto, know your impact and choose to care. Welcome, Officer Juarez. We need you, and we're so happy to have you helping keep our schools safe. That concludes my report, President Day.
Thank you, Dr. Rayback. Next, we have Board Activity Report. Mr. David Hamilton.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. So the board member activity report, we have the board policy committee meetings, special called meeting EIC workshop, Marshall High School Party on the Run, 12th Annual Willow Ridge Wall of Honor Induction Banquet, 2023-24 Leadership Launch, 2023-24 New Teacher Orientation, meeting with staff to discuss 2023-24 Student Code of Conduct, 2023-24 Kickoff with Transportation Department, Audit Committee Meeting, 2023 Summer Graduation Ceremony, 2023 Virtual Convocation, Fort Bend Chamber, School Safety with Fort Bend County Superintendents, FBISD Night at the Ballpark with the Space Cowboys, State of the County with Judge KP George, FBISD All Coaches Meeting, Campus Visits on First Day of School, Board Team Building Day, Monthly One-to-One Meetings with the Superintendent, Breakfast Meeting with Deputy Superintendent, visits to various campuses on the first day of school, board officers meeting, special called meeting to discuss survey results, Touchdown Club of Houston's preschool season team awards dinner, Fort Bend Economic Development Council meeting. One last thing, Dr. Whitbeck, Touchdown Club award recipient and Ridge Point senior Ashton Bethel Roman asked me where he's going to play football next year.
Where is he going?
Arkansas Razorbacks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. And you can tell everyone is been busy. Thank you to all my fellow trustees. Next, we have public comments. Tonight, we have 4 speakers. The board encourages and welcomes comments and input from our patrons. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And please refrain from mentioning a student or employee's name when voicing a concern or complaint, as board policy provides alternative procedures through the grievance process policies, GF local or DGBA local, to seek resolution to complaints. I will read the name of the person registered to speak and share that they have 3 minutes to make their comments. Once the speaker starts their comments, the board secretary, Mr. David Hamilton, will announce they have 30 seconds remaining. Once the 3 minutes time limit has expired and whether the speaker has concluded their comments, Mr. David Hamilton will announce that the speaker's time has elapsed. And then I will ask you to return to your seat. The first speaker for the night, we have Dr. Stephanie Elise. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
First, thanks for having me. I'm Dr. Stephanie Ellis. I'm a Fort Bend parent, a psychologist, and the president of the Fort Bend Psychological Association. The packets you have are a review of the research that I shared last year with the board about the importance of changing high school start times. To introduce you, in adolescent mammals, all of them, including humans, normal developmental changes cause them to need more sleep than they needed in late childhood or in adulthood, and also to get sleepy later and wake up later. So they're not just lazy. Having them start school at 7:30 is equivalent to asking us to go to sleep at 11 and then drive to work safely and work effectively at 3 in the morning. So last time I was here, y'all did awesome. I was contacted right away. I was invited to join the calendar committee. From that, I got to talk to the assistant superintendent for secondary, but there is a problem, which is that the systems all seem to be tied up in letting parents and teachers dictate the options for school calendars, but they don't know this information. So changing high school start times is demonstrated to improve virtually every metric that parents, teachers, and administrators care about. It can be done with little inconvenience, no financial burden. The common concerns, those are in your packet too, are largely myths. In other districts where this change has been made, 92% of parents and teachers are happy by the end of the first year. You have the power to improve standardized test scores, GPA, and graduation rates. You have the power to reduce depression, anxiety, and suicidality. You have the power to improve eating habits, BMI, and physical activity levels. You have the power to reduce classroom discipline issues, juvenile delinquency, and risk-taking. You have the power to reduce drowsy driving accidents in our community and injuries in our athletes. Or we can keep relying on an uninformed body of stakeholders to make disastrous decisions out of ignorance. So what do we want to do with that information? Do we want to educate parents and teachers before this next round of calendar options comes around, or do you just want to change it because the evidence is so sound? And because the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the U.S. Surgeon General,
30 seconds.
and the Texas Department of State Health Services all already recommend it. We should just wait around for the legislature to require it while our teens in Fort Bend continue to suffer and underperform. So Let's do something. I'll do something. Put me on another committee. Let me send the information out in a district-wide email. Send me your questions. Let me come back and give you the answers. I want to do something. Please join me. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Alice, for coming tonight. Next, we have Mr. Nishant Ganani. Thank you, sir, for coming tonight. And you two have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. President Day, Dr. Whitbeck, Board of Trustees, thank you for having me here today. I'm speaking to you about the EIC policy that's up before the board this evening. I hope this is the absolute last time that I have to speak or my child has to speak about this policy. So the key question that I have is, with this change, are we a ranking district or a non-ranking district, right? So if you're a non-ranking district after this with this policy as proposed, that's a contract that we had signed, and everything is good. Please go ahead and approve this policy as presented. But if we are going to be a ranking district, hiding this rank from a transcript doesn't change anything, right? I mean, we still have to report the rank when we are applying to colleges. That's the matter that I've raised multiple times. So if we are going to be a ranking district, I would encourage that we make some changes to the policy as presented. On page 3, there's a paragraph. You can strike that paragraph for classes of 2024 to 2027. The paragraph following that, you can change that for class of 2024 and beyond. So quick changes to the paragraph, and you can still approve the policy as presented. Because if Fort Bend ISD continues to be a ranking district and continues to rank the program of choice students to the zone campus, the Board of Trustees is basically invalidating the policy, the contract that we had signed as parents, as students with Fort Bend ISD, where we said that we agree that we're going to be ranked to the school of attendance as long as the district is a non-ranking district, right? And then so you can't change the game as one of the trustees has described it in the matter that you choose to see fit, right? Like either you got to be fair to the kids who go to the program of choice or not, right? So because if you continue to provide the rank, if this is a ranking district and you continue to provide a rank and you rank the students in a program of choice to their zoned school, it's literally like gerrymandering, right? Like you're basically getting your accountability from these students, but yet you don't want to rank them with their peers in the school that they attend, right? So
30 seconds.
Just please think about that as you make your vote this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for coming tonight. Next, we have Mr. Jay Jenkins. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks for having me. Good evening, y'all. My name is Jay Jenkins. I'm the president of the Convict Leasing and Labor Project, a nonprofit that I founded with my good friend, the late Reginald Moore. I'm here today to talk about the latest land purchase of the school announced in a July 24th press release. The district's press release announced that a parcel of land had been purchased to build an elementary school located on Harlem Road, just south of Harvest Green Boulevard. The other information in this press release was minimal, including a lack of historical context. Had the press release included that historical context, it would have mentioned that this land, the Harlem Farm, was one of the most brutal prison work farms in the state of Texas at the time. It would have mentioned that in the 1880s, when other states were considering curtailing convict leasing, the folks at the Harlem Farm went and evangelized the practice to Mississippi and Alabama. This farm was worked until the late 20th century as part of the Jester unit. And as a result, we're all sort of in the community watching and have some expectations. We expect that the errors and transgressions that came along with the development of Ellis Camp No. 2 site and the discovery of the Sugarland 95 to be corrected, and that culturally and historically qualified archaeologists be hired to do the land surveying in order to prevent any more embarrassing histories from being uncovered. We expect those that were imprisoned at the Harlem prison farm and their descendants to be treated like human beings with dignity and respect and not like property simply because the district has purchased a parcel of land. I urge the district to do the right thing and spare no expense to ensure that another Sugar Land 95 event does not happen. This latest land purchase has the attention of all the community. We will be watching, and rest assured, Reggie's watching y'all from up above. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for coming tonight. Next, we have Ms. Karina Anderson. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the school board, Superintendent Whitbeck, and all valued stakeholders present here today at the board meeting and viewing this board meeting. My name is Karina Anderson, president of Fort Bend American Federation of Teachers. I am here representing our members and potential members who educate and support the schools and to ensure our students receive a quality education. Our district, like many schools across the state and nation, are facing many challenges in education, including reduced student funding, underfunded legislative mandates, concerns with school safety and class size, and a declining workforce in education and law enforcement. However, with all the challenges we face, I want to remind you that we are in this together. Together we thrive, and our members, your employees, working conditions are our students' learning conditions. By taking care of our needs of our employees, we ensure our students have what they need to succeed. Educators not only need competitive wages, but we also need support, including the amount of time for planning, grading, lunch and breaks, and the hours worked in the classroom and at home during the week. An allowance for classroom resources instead of out-of-pocket expenses and dollars spent to support our students. A reduction in the extra meetings and paperwork requirements. Monetary acknowledgement for high-performing teachers and flexible paraprofessionals who go above and beyond to close gaps on our campuses, as well as equitable wages for our custodians who clean our buildings. We want to encourage Fort Bend ISD to create a much more respectful culture that allows both employees and students to thrive. Let's continue to work together to improve Fort Bend ISD. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. Let's conclude our public comments. And next, we have information item. And tonight, we have no new information item. So next, we're going to move to consent agenda. Do we have discussion for the consent agenda? Any board member needs to pull any consent agenda items? Seeing none, can I have a motion?
Yes, I move the board to approve consent agenda. Item 9, A, B, C, D, E, and 7 as presented. I'm sorry, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 as presented.
Second. We have a motion by Dr. Gilliam and second by Ms. Hannon. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Mr. Fang, we have a little. Okay, there we go. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have a closed session. So we will now convene in closed session under Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, under the following sections. Section 551071, for the purpose of a private consultant. consultation with the board attorney on any or all subjects of matters authorized by law. Section 551.072, consider purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. Section 551.074, personnel matters. Section 551.076, security matters. Section 551.082, student discipline matters or complaint, or Section 551.0821, personally identifiable information about public school students. The time now is 6:44 p.m. and we are now coming in closed session. The closed session is roughly 60 minutes to 75 minutes. Thank you, everyone. The time is 8:44 p.m. and we are now reconvened in open session. So do we have a motion from closed session?
Yes. I move that the board approve the settlement agreement in number 19-DCV-264215, Fort Bend ISD versus Bartlett, Cock, and delegate to the superintendent the authority to finalize the settlement.
I second.
We have a motion by Ms. Hannan, second by Dr. Gilliam. Do we have a discussion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Has everyone voted?
Yeah. I mean, because they are not here, we have two trustees currently not here. Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Do I have another motion from closed session?
I move the Board of Trustees accept the superintendent's recommendation and approve Rebecca Martin as Associate General Counsel.
A second.
We have a motion by Ms. Jones and second by Ms. Garcia. Do we have a discussion? Mr. Hamilton, we're voting right now in the closed session item, the superintendent recommendation for the director.
Associate General Counsel.
Associate General Counsel. Okay. I don't see any discussion. Let's vote. Motion passes 6-0. Do I have another motion from closed session?
Yes, Madam President. I move the Board of Trustees approve the proposed revisions of local policy EIC local as presented.
Second.
No, that's
Madam
not from,
President,
sorry,
that's-
sorry,
My
Dr.
bad, my
Gilliam.
bad.
That's not
Hold on.
from closed
Okay,
session.
hold on.
Yes.
Which one is, then I only have one, my bad. Okay, that wasn't it. Nope.
Do we have to,
Okay.
I would withdraw.
Yes, I
the
moved the-
motion
okay,
by
let's
unanimous
withdraw
consent.
can you withdraw the motion, please, Dr. Gilliam?
I move the Board of Trustees endorse the following candidates to represent Region 4 as a director on the Texas Association.
That's still an open item.
We need to withdraw the motion.
I move the Board of Trustees approve the Budget and Finance Committee charter. Not that. Why are you asking me?
You need to
Okay,
withdraw
tell me
the
what I need to
motion.
do.
You need to, I move the board to withdraw the motion.
Okay.
For,
I move the board to
Can I-
withdraw the motion.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gilliam.
Okay.
So can I have another motion from closed session, which is the media director? Who has the motion? Okay, Ms. Malone.
Yes, President Day, I move the Board of Trustees accept the superintendent's recommendation and approve Maria DePetta as Director of Multimedia Communication Strategy.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Malone, second by Ms. Garcia. Do we have a discussion? Seeing none, let's vote.
And my apologies, I am now awake. I move. We are doing this one, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So motion passes 7-0. I believe we have one last motion.
We do
from
have one
closed
last
session.
motion. I move the Board of Trustees assign the Level 3 employee grievance of Francis K. Mitchell to the board's designated hearing officer under Board Policy DGPAA Local.
Second.
We have a motion by Dr. Gilliam, second by Ms. Hannan. Do we have a discussion?
No discussion.
No discussion. Let's vote. Oops. Dr. Gilliam, third time is a charm. Thank you. Motion passes 7-0. Now, only if I can find the agenda item. So now we are going to move to agenda item, action item 13. So first we have action 13A. Can I have a motion, please?
I move the Board of Trustees approve the proposed revisions of local policy EIC Local as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Dr. Gilliam, second by Mr. Hamilton. Do we have a discussion? So, yeah, before we open the discussion, I'm going to ask Mr. Wilbank to give a summary to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Day. Regarding EIC tonight, remember the primary decision points that are before the board regarding EIC are, you have two primary decision points. One is class rank, like who receives their class rank? Is it the top 10%? Is it the entire class? And then second, it's the program of choice and where the program of choice are ranked. Are they ranked at their campus of attendance or their zoned campus? So brief history of why we're here tonight. December of 2019, the board at that time voted to revise policy EIC Local, and they moved away from being a ranking district where they provided class rank to every student to being a non-ranking district where they only provided class rank to the top 10% as required by law. They also changed the program of choice students in 2019 from being ranked at their campus of attendance to their zoned campus for purposes of notifying the top 10%. Those changes in 2019 were adopted to begin with the class of 2024. In April 17th of 2023, at our board meeting, you authorized a one-time release of class rank, and you requested that the administration review the current class ranking policy, EIC Local, with the board policy committee. In July, on July 27th, board held a workshop on class rank, was provided various information and research and procedures from other campuses, from university, and additional information regarding this decision. Then on August 7th at the board meeting, you received an additional update, including a district recommendation. The district recommendation at that time for class rank was that all students would be provided their quartile rank, and then the quartile, and then the top 10% students would receive their rank via notification letters. And then for program of choice students, that current students, the classes of 24, 25, 26, and 27 would continue following the current policy, and then future students for 2028 and beyond, the pros and cons were reviewed. The policy committee met on August the 15th, and ultimately out of that meeting comes the recommendation that's before you tonight. And so importantly, that recommendation tonight is this recommendation regarding class rank. The recommendation that all students, beginning with the class of 2024 and beyond, would receive notice of both their quartile and their class rank. Regarding the program of choice students, the recommendation from the policy committee is that current students, classes of 24, 25, 26, and 27, would continue following the current policy of being ranked where they are zoned, and then future students, the class of 2028 and beyond, would return to being ranked where they attend. The recommended version also includes some other conforming revisions, removing outdated provisions of dates that were older, as well as adjusting some transfer provisions to maintain consistency, and changing pre-AP to AAC and some of those other minor changes. But your primary change would ultimately move the district from being a non-ranking district back to being a ranking district.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Wilbeck. I'm opening for discussion, questions from the board. Mr. Hamilton.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Wilbanks. That was a very helpful summary, and I just want to add as the Policy Committee Chair, so I think the easy part, in my opinion, was basically going back to the pre-2019 changes. There was pretty easy consensus, I think, on that front, and the thing that we spent the most time discussing was what to do with the students who were already in high school. And so I think the policy changes were well-intentioned, and they just created more problems than they solved. And so I think we're making the right decision to go back to how things were pre those 2019 changes. And then just I think it's worth reiterating that it's a very complex situation driven by all of the complexities that come with our academy programs and students who don't live in those zones but attend those campuses. And so I think it was very challenging, but I think we came to the decision that is in the best interest of the district and of most students, even though not everybody's going to love it. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Ms. Malone.
Yes, thank you, President Day. I just have a couple questions for the Policy Committee. So they're getting ranked with quartile and class rank. Can you tell me effectively how that works? Let's say I know Texas A&M or Prairie View A&M, both of them are they request rank. So if I am a student who is the 27th student, how does that work? What do they record? What's the effective nature of this?
So as Dr. Westbrook's making her way up, I won't speak for her. I'll let her speak. Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. So I think I understand what you're asking. You're asking how the university will receive the information and interpret the information as far as being the 27th.
I'm saying, so in here, we're not only doing class rank, but we're also doing your quartile rank. I guess, how about this? Can you tell me the benefits of doing both class and quartile? And can you also tell me effectively how this will work with the students at colleges that require rank? Can they choose and select to not record their rank, but rather their quartile?
So in essence, we actually haven't worked out how it will actually exist on paper, so to speak, electronic paper. So as far as can you have quartile separate than rank on two separate sheets of paper? Conceivably, that's possible, and you could request what you wanted. Say a scholarship just wanted your rank. If that's what the board chose, that would be a possibility.
Okay, let me try again. When you all spoke and collected data from colleges and universities, and they told you what they look for, whether it's a holistic application or if they're a ranking school, was there discussion about how it would effectively impact these kids with recording their class rank or their quartile ranking?
Yes, we actually got information we provided during the workshop, how the different universities actually take in that information. Some of them don't want rank. Some of them do. They actually do what we call a holistic review, is what typically is done. They can rank the students based on other students who have previously actually applied to the university, looking at the GPAs, the courses they've taken, and then the difficulty of the courses. So did they stretch themselves, and then did that attribute to the GPA? And then they compare the students that have been, who have applied from the different schools. So they actually look at, say, one high school. So if it was Whitbeck High School, they would look at all the students that ever applied from Dr. Whitbeck High School and determine where the students ranked if there was no rank applied by the school. And in reality, they do compare the students to prior applicants and other applicants from the same school.
Okay, but that's if we were to not rank, but we are ranking. So what does a student record? Do they record their quartile? Do they get a choice in the matter, or do they record their actual rank?
So I think to add to your question there, the recommendation by the policy committee is changing to be a ranked district. So if students are asked their rank or their quartile, and again, when you rank students, you have what quartile you're in. So that, this, again, additional information. Fort Bend ISD students would need to provide their rank. They would not have that choice if the college or university required that they enter that information. So this recommendation by the policy committee would require all of our students to provide their rank. The previous recommendation that administration gave was to offer up quartiles only, but after further discussion, the policy committee felt strongly, based on the survey data, based on other factors, that they wanted to provide rank to all students. Does that help, Ms. Malone?
Yes, and then so including the class of 24 to 27, they are required to provide their rank.
It would work the same if the board decided to go forward as is.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Malone. Ms. Hannan.
Thank you, Dr. Lawson, for that clarification, because what I want to make sure that the board knows, that if this passes, if you get your rank, the college or university could do math and figure out what quartile you're in, because it gives that information. So they're just adding information to the record. But what I wanted to just formally say is I do appreciate the staff and the work that they did, providing us with a workshop and lots of information in our board updates. It was a lot of information, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the board's conscientious effort to try to understand this situation, because it is confusing, and like Mr. Hamilton said, I'm paraphrasing, but not everybody's going to be happy, and not everybody's happy now. And so it was, I commend Ms. Jones and Mr. Hamilton and the folks that helped with the policy committee, because it was a hard conversation to have. But I do stand by this recommendation that the policy committee is bringing forward to the rest of the board tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hannan. So I don't see any other questions, so I do have a couple of questions or clarification. So I appreciate Dr. Wilbank's summary. Just like today, we have a speaker, asking. So my understanding is, first of all, before we vote on this policy, as of today, the district, Fort Bend ISD, is a non-ranked district. Is that correct? Can someone confirm that?
Correct. The policy for Fort Bend ISD at this moment is to be a non-ranked district.
So I just so once we vote on this policy tonight, if the board approve this policy, then the district will change to a ranked district based on this recommendation.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I just want to clarify. Second, I do remember from the workshop, recommendation was the quartile instead of the actual rank. But I also hear, to me, there is very key points which I heard about FAPA. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, one of the reasons the recommendation was changed, when you're providing quartile, in order to calculate the quartile, the district would already know behind the scenes the student's rank. And so FERPA, of course, is the Federal Educational Rights and Privacy Act, and it governs a parent's right to access their children's educational records. So under FERPA, if a parent requested, I need to know what my child's class rank was, because we already have that calculated and stored on the back end of the system, a parent would have access to that. And so the question became, if we were a non-ranked district and we provided quartile, then the concern was parents would then use FERPA to access the rank, and whether or not the staff would be ready, depending upon how many parents requested that every year, and it would be kind of a random, not a well prepared system because of just the ad hoc nature of it. And so I think that was a primary consideration for the shift from quartile to rank.
Thank you so much for that clarification, because for me, that really make a very big difference. Because we don't want to be a non-ranked, but at the same time, we have many parents asking for their ranks for their children. So thank you for that. I also want to thank for the policy committee for all their hard work. It's not an easy policy. It's a very difficult decision. So I appreciate everyone. So I don't see any. Do you have? Yeah. So Ms. Malone, you have.
Okay, on that, thank you. That's exactly where I was going with that. And I know I said 26, but I think I meant like 24th, if you were in the 24th percentile in Q1, and basically the first quarter, and what their recommendation was from that meeting. So thank you for clarifying that. That makes complete sense as far as the data already being available. And again, thanks, guys, for doing the work. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So I don't see any other questions. Let's vote. Motion passes 7-0. So next, I'm going to move the action item C, move to, because we all know the VATRE is going to be a very big discussion. So I'm going to move up the 13C. Can I have a motion for 13C, please?
I move the Board of Trustees endorse the following candidates to represent Region 4 as a director on the Texas Association of School Boards, TASB Board: Doug James, Klein ISD; Rose Avalos, Aldine ISD; and Dr. Darlene Bro, Alief ISD.
Second.
We have a motion by Dr. Gilliam, a second by Ms. Hannon. Do we have any discussion? Mr. Garcia.
The endorsements, did they come recommended by somebody? And is Madam or Trustee Malone serving as our director, or I was just kind of curious. Do they just email us and ask us, and they're the only ones that asked? So that's okay. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, they emailed it to, as far as I know, because also I'm limited to Toma. So as far as I know, they emailed to me and Dr. Wayback, and then normally it's a courtesy to asking. Yeah.
Thank you. I was just getting curious.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. Martinez, sorry, did I?
Sure. There's some documents in your board book under closed session from each of the districts that are endorsing with some additional information.
Yeah, I was looking through them, and I was.
They did send over their resume and their qualification. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Mr. Hamilton.
Yes, just clarification, so we can put two people in this position A, or is it's two different position A's?
No, this.
Do we need to vote? That's what
We need to vote. I mean, basically, this is from our
Yeah.
Yeah. This is just endorsement. It's not like, we are not
Okay.
deciding if they get a position or not. They have to have their own election at the TASB. We're
you.
just making endorsement.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
of course. Dr. Gideon.
Good. Thank you, Madam President. I would like to share all three of these people are educators. Dr. Darlene Bro, Alief ISD. She's very active. She's consistently been on the Texas Association of School Boards in the director part. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gideon. That's very helpful. Seeing no other discussion, please vote. Motion passes 7-0. Can I have a motion for action item 13D regarding to the Budget Committee Charter, please?
I move the Board of Trustees approve the Budget and Finance Committee Charter as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Dr. Gideon, a second by Mr. Hamilton. Before I open this for discussion, I want to just make a comment. At the beginning of the school year, I expressed my wishful thoughts that the board will do a lot of work through committees. So I really appreciate the Budget Committee take the initiative and come up with a charter and bring to the board. So for me, charter is a guideline for a committee, and then that will be persistent or consistent because we do change committee members every year. So that way we'll have a guideline document for the committee, so to keep the committee being consistent. And also I appreciate Ms. Malone putting into a lot of work, working with the administration to try to reach agreement. And also I know because FOMA and TOMA, I read the charter, so that's why I create a little bit complication to the committee. So we're all learning here, and so I appreciate understanding from everyone, especially the member from the Budget Committee. So that being said, I'm gonna open for the discussion. So Ms. Malone.
Buttons. First off, President Day, I'd like to amend the motion to approve the charter as is, but I'd like to strike the word development on 3C within the charter in its entirety. 3C, strike the word development.
Can I have a second?
Second.
We have amended motion by Ms. Malone and second by Mr. Hamilton. Do we have a discussion? Ms. Malone?
Yes, thank you. Okay. First of all, thank you, President Day. I know that you created and newly formed the Finance and Budget Committee in Fort Bend ISD, and we've been on this daunting journey of a $47 million deficit to the remarkable achievement of the district cutting over $40 million. And so thank you guys for that. And then we passed a remarkable $1.2 billion bond, and now there's a proposed VATRE aimed at enhancing our maintenance and operations budget. This committee's establishment is a testament to the board's dedication to fiscal responsibility, transparency, and optimizing every dollar spent while ensuring our educational mission remains intact. Requested by President Day, it's been entrusted with us the task of shepherding our district's finances towards a more stable and prosperous state. I'd like to draw your attention to the proposed charter, and it's merely in the scope of any trustee. It's a foundational document.
President Day,
Yeah.
the board should first vote on the motion to amend before debating the merits of the motion.
Okay.
Sorry, sorry about that. So, no, we need to vote on the amendment first before we can open for the discussion. So let's vote on the amendment.
Sorry,
What was the amendment?
Should I explain why?
Yeah, point of clarification so that you can move to a time of discussion on the amendment.
Correct.
But I think Trustee Malone was moving
All
to
right.
discussion on the actual motion, on the actual.
On the
Charter.
So simply the word development was an oversight. If you read, it says recommend fiscal policies to the board regarding fiscal management, investment practice, and fund reserves. The intention there is that the Finance and Budget Committee, should it see a need for policy change, depending on what we're doing, and it's got we do a fiscal and budgetary strategy annually, so that would be there, but if there were some changes, then we would request that the policy committee would then go and look at actually making and adopting and proposing policy changes to the board. So simply that word development, just a mere oversight, which is why I asked for it to be struck.
Do we have question for Ms. Malone regarding to the amendment? Dr. Gilliam?
Yes, okay.
Just about the amendment. Thank you.
Well, when am I going to be able to talk about where this charter come from?
So after the amendment, we vote on that, and then we can go back
Well, the
to
only thing I have
motion.
to say about the amendment, it looks like we're truly in the weeds there. Is that why we're pulling it out?
No, we're pulling it out because the word development is not applicable to the language within there.
So right now, we're discussing her amendment just for that one word.
We're just taking out development.
Yeah, we're just
I
taking out the
wanna
one
discuss
word.
the whole-
Yeah, and after
Okay,
that, we'll.
I'll wait.
Yeah.
Because
okay.
I don't understand.
Yes, okay, so let's vote on the amendment.
So we're voting to change the word,
Just-
to strike the word development from the motion.
Yeah, just one word. Motion passes 5-1 with 1 abstain. So now we are going back.
Now the board can debate the
Yeah.
motion as amended.
Yes, now the board will vote on the motion as amended. And then do we have a discussion? Ms. Malone?
Okay, we're going to try this again. Essentially, everything I just said, thank you, President Day. I respect that you created this committee and the tension with it being done after the bond was passed. And frankly, we had a $47 million deficit previously. Then we passed a $1.2 billion bond, and now we're moving forward with a proposed VATRE that's aimed at increasing the M&O budget from $25 to $40 million. This committee's establishment is a testament to the board's dedication to fiscal responsibility, transparency, optimizing every dollar spent, while ensuring our educational mission remains intact. Requested by President Day, this committee has been entrusted with the task of shepherding our district's finances towards a more stable and prosperous state. I'd like to draw your attention to the proposed charter. It's just a foundational document that will be a guiding light to the committee's work. This charter is more than just words on paper. It represents our commitment to collaboration, strategic planning, and prudent financial management. It lays out a roadmap that will steer us toward fiscal sustainability and responsible resource allocation. It provides the committee with the opportunity to define the properties within the confines of the charter as the committee deems necessary and useful. It's important to acknowledge that this is a new committee, and frankly, we've encountered hesitations and uncertainties, even from the administration, and challenges with TOMA have risen. And with careful consideration, I requested to bring this charter before the board. I hope that we as a board stand united and resolute in our determination to fulfill our board's obligations to the students, educators, and taxpayers of Fort Bend ISD. Within the scope of this charter, it's no more than just the request that any single board member could obtain. To put it simply, this charter just supports this committee gathering information, having discussion, and making recommendations to the board. The proposed charter is a set of guidelines pledged to overcome challenges, set common ground, and prioritize the greater good here in Fort Bend ISD. As we embark on this journey, let us remember that every decision we make has profound impact on the lives of our students and the future of our district. Adopting this charter and setting forth on this path together, I believe we reinforce our commitment to transparency, cooperation, and results-driven action. We stand on the threshold of this decision, and I recognize fiscal responsibility is not just an obligation, it's a moral imperative. And by passing this proposed charter, we cement our dedication to preserving the educational excellence we offer, both now and for future generations to come. With the uncertainties that we've had with Texas legislation and all of the budgetary constraints, this ensures that our tax dollars entrusted to us are utilized judiciously and with hopes and aspirations that of our community are met with resounding success. As we prioritize our objectives within the committee and work collaboratively toward a brighter future supporting student success, I urge you to support this charter unanimously, underscoring our dedication to our shared goals between administration and the board, with fiscal responsibility and our unwavering fiduciary obligations to the taxpayers of Fort Bend ISD. With that, I want to say this has been very, very, very difficult. That originally came forth with the resolution, and then there was challenges met with that, and was requested to write a charter. I wound up writing the charter, and so I want to share because TOMA restrictions, haven't been able to communicate with you all. With TOMA restrictions, I went to Board Attorney Rick Morris, and I shared with him the charter however long ago. Then he came back and he asked me to share it with President Day because he said we may be doing more charters with various committees and for her to have a viewing of it. Although we have a committee of 3, I was conflicted with who to go to, whether it would be Ms. Hannon or Mr. Garcia. And frankly, guys, I didn't want to pick. And I was at the guidance of council, I didn't. With this charter, all it is what any board member can do on their own. There is no special privilege in this charter or confines. It simply says these are fiscal responsibilities and this is a priority to us, and that our committee would define what those priorities are within it. So my apologies for not including you, because let me tell you, I wanted to so very badly. But with being appointed the chair and with guidance from council, I moved forward. I shared this with administration, and I met with Steve Bassett and Brian Gwynn. They both provided several modifications, and we struck words, and I presented it to them. I will say, well, let me say that. I will say I believe we made common ground and a path forward, and that we're willing to work together with intent of working together as a team of 8 and a stronger board and administration, propelling this district forward with fiscal responsibility. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malone. Ms. Hannon.
Thank you, Ms. Malone, for the apology. But I do want to underscore and I want to make clear to the board that the board Budget and Finance Committee is not bringing this forward because we did not all work on it. And I know Ms. Malone was conflicted because she didn't want to violate TOMA, and I appreciate that. Like, being on the board and being on committees is tough because it's such an awkward way to communicate. But with that in mind, legal counsel may need to help me because I know there's a motion on the floor right now, but I would request that we table that motion until such time that this item can be reviewed by the full Budget and Finance Committee. And then we can, all three of us, review the charter and bring it back to the full board. The other reason that I would like for my colleagues to table this item is because we have nothing in our board operating procedure that speaks to charters. And I really believe that if we, and to my knowledge, we have never voted on a charter. And I can't recall if, I have never, I think I've seen one charter maybe that Ms. Day created for something, but that was just shared with me privately. So I really, for two reasons, I want this tabled. One, so the full Budget and Finance Committee has the opportunity to review it. And two, so that this board, hopefully in the near future, we're going to be looking at our board operating procedures so that if we all want to establish charters for every policy, not policy committee, every board committee, that we decide what the parameters are for that. I think that's very important for us to establish. Are we going to have charters, and what do the charters look like? And I won't speak specifically to the items in this charter, but I do see some pieces that give me a little bit of pause and concern in relation to other committees. So I don't know how that works, Mr. Brush, since I'm requesting that this motion that has been made be tabled.
It would require a motion to postpone the consideration of this pending item that would have to be seconded and voted on by the board in order to postpone this item to another meeting.
And do we do that now while the other motion is
If a motion were
pending?
made, it would take precedence over the motion that's being currently debated, and the board would take up the motion to postpone.
Okay. Mr. Brush, do I need a date that this will be postponed to?
There are two types of motions: to postpone indefinitely, which effectively kills an item, and postpone to a time certain, which you don't necessarily need a specific date, but you could articulate a triggering event such as after a subsequent policy meeting, after the next policy meeting.
Okay. Can I say after the board reviews board operating procedures revolving around charters, or is that too global?
That is probably too global, particularly to the extent that the board operating procedures may or may not contemplate charters. I would think that the range of potential motions for postponement would be until after a policy committee meeting, until after the board has considered its board operating procedures. Each of those would be a sufficient triggering date for the board and the public to know when the matter would be taken off the table.
Okay. Well, we'll see if I get a second. But so I move to postpone this item until the Budget and Finance Committee is able to review this charter and bring it back to the board.
I second.
So point of information or point of clarification. So I think the reason that did not happen initially, so was there a discussion between President Day and Trustee Malone? And so would it be violating TOMA since it's already been discussed by a trustee not on the policy committee? That would be 4 trustees discussing it.
So I think now that it's been brought forth to public discussion, if it's directed back to the committee, it would be a new item for committee discussion, similar to when the board considers policy in an open meeting and then directs that it return to the policy committee.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a motion by Ms. Hannan and second by Dr. Gilliam. Do we have a discussion? So Ms. Hannan, I wanted to clarify one thing. So I did have conversation with our board counsel, Mr. Rick Morris. So for the committee, the board committee, if we have a charter, we need to bring to the board to vote. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
And also the reason it didn't get to go to the committee itself is really because they sent it to me because this is the first one ever we are doing. So that's the reason it didn't. So I wanted to apologize for that. And also I wanted to clarify it's putting Ms. Malone in a very difficult position.
Right, and I understand the position she's in, but I don't want to create precedent by us operating in this fashion with charters if we're moving in that direction where the committee chair has the president read it, and then the other committee members aren't privy to what's coming to the board.
Yes, thank you. And also, I just want to also make sure everyone understands at any certain time, because you have 3 committee members, you can always bring this charter back to the board for amendment. It's also an option. Like even we vote on it because everything can change once the committee start working together. You realize you need an amendment. You can always bring to the board for amendment. So that being said, do we have any? Okay, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you. So I understand the dilemma. You asked for a charter, and so
I did ask.
Well, you know. The committee, and you had created the committee, and we had talked about creating charters, and basically, not to make this a big deal, but what is the committee supposed to do? And I brought up we talk about this all the time at our job, we're in IT or whatever, and if you get hit by a proverbial bus, what's the next guy going to do that somebody comes in, or if a teacher goes on, needs a sub, what's the plan for the sub? So if we're not there, and like you said, we're always rotating in and out. So I think the idea of a charter is a really good idea. And I understand the situation that Trustee Malone was in from shared it with, and you can't share it with us. So we got it sent to a second hand. But reading the charter in itself, and when I look at it, I'm looking at words like review, monitor, make recommendations. And one of the concerns that I have is that I think you had met with Brian or Mr. Gwynn and Mr. Bassett for several hours, and I hear that y'all came to some consensus, which is good that y'all were able to come up with a plan. So as long as we're that level of oversight and that quote governance, and we're looking at it at that level, and we're not the bottleneck because, at the end of the day, we're only meeting quarterly, and the administration's in a situation where we can't move forward because we got to go to the policy or the budget committee first. I don't think that's not how I read this. So, and I know that the manner in which it came to us is probably not the way it was intended, or it was kind of unintended. So, I think, in the future, if we wanted to make changes to it, I think I'm okay with approving the charter as is. Just with that understanding, with the understanding of the administration that we're not trying to get in the way of everyday, day-to-day tasks and the work. This is just for us to know what to do, and not even for us, but for Trustee Hamilton or for Trustee Jones. If we rotate in and out, what is the committee supposed to do? So that's kind of the intent and the purpose of what a charter is supposed to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Dr. Gilliam.
Thank you, President Day, and thank you, Ms. Hannan, for thank you for sharing your concerns. And thank you also for providing, I would definitely like to table this, as we have, of course, I second. And I hear you, Ms. Malone. And I actually wrote, I hear your concern, and I hear how passionate you are about it. So I hope that we can table it so that I can understand it. Let me just talk for me. And I want to be very honest. In reading today, I turned the page, and then I saw this, and it's the last 2 pages in our board book. And as I'm reading it, the first thing that I actually went to look, okay, tell me what governance is versus management. I know what it is, but I want it to see it, and I want it to read it over, and then when I go back, I would just like to make sure that this is exactly what this is about. Because my first read is that there is monitoring here. Of course, we monitor, but and I skimmed over it. I didn't read it for understanding and let me really see what's going on in the deep stuff. But when I see the purpose and the committee governance and scope, and I'm like, those are different words to me. They're management words, and I could be wrong. So I looked it up and just really, board governance versus management. What's the difference? Board should govern, not manage. The difference is often misunderstood, and the impact of such confusion can adversely impact the institution. Frequently, one can tell whether a board is governing by the questions that are asked by the trustees. So I'm going to stop there because, of course, time is. But in that, it gave examples of a column of management and then the column of governance. And I just want to say that one of the management bullets is the question, what do we pay our teachers? Rather than, do we have a compensation philosophy and how is its effectiveness measured? But as board, and it's management to want to know. That's what it has here. We can debate about it later. But I hear your passion, and and thank you, Mr. Garcia, for your response and your input, because then I can see a different kind of shade over there. Okay, so if you all come together, I think we could find some type of mid-ground. I was very concerned when I read it and how it's written. And I'm going to go and read it again, but I'm very concerned that we're really kind of tapping into something different. But that is the way that I've read it, but I'm going to read it again.
Thank you, Dr. Gideon. Ms. Malone.
Yes, so just a couple things. One, it doesn't say anything here about teacher salaries. It's simply, so I'm going to highlight the main bullets throughout this thing, just so the public understands, because I want to make sure there's not any confusion or misrepresentation on it. Number one, under the scope, it simply has budget review and recommendation. So the administration would provide their recommendations. This committee would merely review those recommendations, discuss them with them, and come to the board with a recommendation. Financial planning, same situation regarding the long-term financial plans, which seeing that we just passed a $1.2 billion bond, and now we're potentially going to ask the public for another $40 million to add to our budget, and we just had to cut over $40 million. It seems reasonable. Financial policy, every year, fiscal and budgetary strategies are brought before the board. This just gives the committee a chance to review these things, guys. We just had a team building meeting where we said we wanted to do student success, and make sure we're doing student outcomes. Well, that's what the goal is to create the efficiency so that at the board meeting, we can maybe do some more student outcomes because the Finance and Budget Committee has already met and taken a deeper dive to provide recommendations. Same thing on bond planning. It's just bond planning. And this, Of course, we don't expect another bond in the next year or two. This is just written so that it lives on, whether it's us as trustees or someone else. It's just broad. Bond fund expenditures. They currently have a quarterly report to the BOC, so we could review the same report if the committee chooses to. The committee doesn't have to choose to. If you go back above, within the scope, it says that what the committee deems helpful and useful. And then financial reporting and transparency, there's risk management, capital expenditure evaluation, and fundraising and revenue diversification. All of this is something that is intended to be discussed with the CFO, Mr. Brian Gwynn, and for us to come up with our objectives. This district hasn't had a finance and budget committee, so this is not us going in and asking these down in the weeds questions, at least in my view. I hope not. I hope that wouldn't be anybody else's intent either, and working together. And I'm going to just speak for myself for a minute now, and that was tasked by our president, and I listened and moved forward. Do I think things were more ideal and there's a lot more time? Yeah, but I also believe we need to get to work. And frankly, we said we'd come back in August after we approved the massive 1.2 bond budgets in its entirety with how we were going to move forward. All this says here is we'll review the bond expenditures. And it says quarterly, and if we need to more often, then we would. The reality is, like if you go to we always talk about our neighboring districts. If you go to Lamar, which we compare to all the time, or Katy, they meet every single month. And they have a finance and budget meeting, and they go into the deep weeds. And we like to talk about our bond dashboard and how all of that's there, and that they don't have that. And I can understand, and I appreciate the dashboard. It's simply for us to have a meeting of the minds and 3 people to say, hey, yeah, or if we have questions on something to raise them, because 3 is better than 1. Now, if you don't support it or want to move forward with it, I can understand. And I can understand particularly that if you didn't get it from me. And frankly, Mr. Garcia, I wish I could have given it to you. You too, Mrs. Hannon. I know that I came to Mr. Bassett and Mr. Gwynn and Dr. Whitbeck and let them know in advance this was coming, that I'm waiting because there's a process, and gave it to them before you guys. And it's my understanding that they gave it to you. They knew it was coming. So this isn't like Kristen's trying to underhand you. This is extremely broad in nature on purpose, within the scope of finance and budget, so that we as a committee have latitude to then determine what our priorities are. And so I want to be abundantly clear on that. This wasn't to underhand you in any way, shape, or form. This was with the council, and guidance, and looking at other budget and finance committees across the state of Texas and discussing with the administration, so that it would be broad in scope, and we then could come together and define our priorities. Now, for me personally, coming to me, and we have a vote on a via Terry, this is incredibly important to me. With knowing that we passed a bond, it was incredibly important that we had a little more oversight. Because how did we get into the predicament we were in before? And I'm not going to go into all of that, but I ask myself, how did we get there? And why, and what can we do differently to ensure that doesn't happen again? And what is our responsibility? And to me, it's not just a financial or fiduciary responsibility. I said that earlier. It is a moral imperative.
Thank you, Ms. Malone. Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam President. So I just want to say some of this, I think, also goes back to President Day's desire to try to have each of the trustees chair a committee and try to direct more of the board work to the committee level so that the committees can do a little bit more in the weeds, and then they bring recommendations to the board so that we, in these meetings, don't have to get into the weeds, and maybe someday we get out of here earlier than we have been. And so I support the things that Trustee Day is doing with establishing committees and trying to direct more work to the committee level, and also support this charter. And I appreciate the explanation, Mrs. Malone. And it's just helpful to understand the driving force behind this. And it totally makes sense to me with the bond and some board oversight of the bond as we move into it and we start to hopefully break ground on some projects and all that kind of stuff. And then also looking towards the VATRE. And so with that urgency and also the broad language in this charter, I'm against tabling the motion personally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Ms. Jones.
I just have a quick question. So what did we have before the charter? What did the board have before the charter came about?
We don't have, yeah. We have, I mean, for as far as I know, we don't have for each board committee. Some of the committee may have a resolution, but we don't have charter. I mean, that's why I said in order for the committee to have a board committee to have a charter, we need to bring it to the board, and this is the first one.
Okay. I think it's most appropriate. I mean, being on the MUD, we had charters, and it governed how we performed on certain committees. And I just think this is just a standard practice of any organization. So
Thank you so much, Ms. Jones. I think right now the motion is if to table this motion to the future. Let's vote on that because we still have the motion, original motion pending. So let's vote on if you want to table this motion. Motion failed, 2-5. So now we have a motion, pending motion on the floor. If we have no more discussion, we'll just vote on the motion to pass the charter as presented.
As amended.
As amended, sorry, as amended. There's, Dr. Gideon.
And I had that first. I definitely want to clear, Ms. Malone, what I was reading from, it was not on the document that you had. That was not. And basically what I did is just a little bit of research and I was reading from that as far as where that came from. So I definitely want you to know that was not here. And again, my purpose in saying what I said is when I read it, it did something to me. Now, when you explain it and it comes out, and when you're talking about who you are and how you want this to work, that's not what I received from this in the words. And it's not necessarily, as I'm reading it, that's not what I receive. What I receive is there's a lot of management in here. However, we are moving on, and I do want you to know that I definitely do hear your passion. And I do believe whatever you put in your mind to do, Ms. Malone, I've seen it, and you get it done. So I want to make sure that you do hear that from me on the dais.
I appreciate that, Dr. Gilliam, and I think the big conundrum or the challenge is that it is in the Texas Education Code as far as what a board's required to do regarding financial resources and that oversight. And so that's where a lot of this is driven from. It's not Kristen wanted to put all of this in there. It was discussing with other boards, looking at the code, and then trying to work together to come to consensus. And I genuinely hope that with the intent, it's not weeds, but that it actually creates greater long-term efficiency and strengthens our district moving forward.
Thank you, Ms. Malone. Ms. Hannan?
Yes, so I didn't want to get in the weeds, and I didn't want to have this conversation on the dais because I know we have a much bigger, pan of fish that we need to fry here in a little bit. So one of the concerns that I appreciate the word development that was struck, even though I abstained because my brain just couldn't wrap around what I was. Anyway, so the word development under financial policy development did give me great pause because I thought that was in conflict with the policy committee. But one of the other items that gives me a great deal of pause, actually before I say that, I hear, since I wasn't privy to any of the conversation you had with staff, But I hear you saying that you and staff came to some sort of agreement that this is something that they support.
Ms. Hanna, I'm sorry, but right now it's almost 10 o'clock.
Okay, then I'm gonna, before we vote, I won't go there, because I was gonna say, does staff bless this, since I wasn't part of this? But I'm hearing that we've come to an agreement. The other thing, I'm not even gonna make you answer that, because that's not appropriate. The bond fund expenditures reads, monitor the allocation and utilization of bond funds to ensure compliance with board policies and that projects are completed within the established timeline and budget constraints. So as a member of this committee is charging itself with looking at every single project and every single timeline to make sure that it is getting done according to.
So they do a quarterly report to the BOC. We would be reviewing the exact same report that they already compile.
Okay, so I would, Ms. Malone, I would like, and that's what I wrote here, it isn't the Bond Oversight Committee, that's their job, and so I'm just, see, that doesn't say that in here, Ms. Malone, so I don't know what the expectations of this are.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
I really don't want to have this debate on the dais, especially.
Well, I
when you
didn't
have
either. That's why I wanted to postpone it.
But I do believe the committee can go back and then to have a discussion with the staff if you want to bring amendment to the board. So today, I really want, let's move on, have a motion to prove this charter as presented. If it pass or fail, we all have opportunity to make an amendment. So that being said, let's vote. Motion passes 5 for it, 1 against, 1 abstain. Motion passed. Thank you. Can I have a motion for item 13B, please? Do we have a recommendation, Dr. Wayback?
I think Brian Gwynn is going to just provide a few pieces of information and we'll go from there, if that's all right.
Yeah, because we don't have a recommendation on the record. Would you, yeah, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Earlier this evening, we had a public hearing on the tax rate, and so at this point, it is time to adopt the tax rate. The board has the option to adopt a tax rate between 94.92 cents and 99.92 cents. And any tax rate that is adopted that exceeds 94.92 cents will result in a VATRE being triggered. During the public hearing, we shared how we would use an additional 2, 3, 4, or 5 cents. And staff's recommendation is to adopt a tax rate of 99.92 cents, which increases the tax rate by 5 cents. The rate generates an additional $40 million, and that will allow us to ensure our schools are safe and secure through the addition of armed security personnel at all elementary campuses. It provides funding to retain and recruit high-quality teachers and other staff who support our students, and to better serve students with special needs. It will also allow us to take advantage of a $17 million grant that will result in one-to-one technology devices at the secondary level, that's both middle and high school. And I'll turn it back over to you, Madam President, for board questions and consideration. Oh, I'm sorry, I did fail to, I have it written down. I apologize, Dr. Whitbeck. We do have here this evening Ms. Ronna Johnson with Advantage, who is a consultant from a PR perspective, who can also assist us in answering questions related to polling and other options the board may want to consider.
Thank you, Ms. Guan. So the board will make a motion, and then we'll open up for discussion. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for being here tonight. Thank you. Can I have a motion, please?
Yes, Madam President. I move the Board of Trustees approve a resolution adopting the combined ad valorem tax rate of .9992 per $100 of valuation for the Fort Bend Independent School District 2023 tax year and ordering a voter approval tax rate election, VATRE, to be held on November 7th, 2023.
Can I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Dr. Gilliam and second by Ms. Hannan. Do we have a discussion? Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam President. So I move that the board amend the motion to set a tax rate of 0.9692 per $100 of valuation, and if the VATRE passes, the funds will be assessed and allocated by the board.
Do I have a second?
You have a second.
So, Mr. Hamilton, can you clarify your amendment? Is that the two? Can you
It's
clarify?
Yes.
How
so
much?
This would be the 2-cent VATRE option. So I think if we purely look at the district need side of the equation, then I think there's a clear argument that we need at least a 5-cent VATRE. And so I think you can get to that dollar amount just purely with that inflation chart. So the impact of inflation since 2020 is more than $70 million, just looking at the impact on the allotment. But I think we have to balance the challenges that the district has dealing with inflation and other financial issues, along with the challenges that our taxpayers have dealing with the financial and other issues. I don't really want to repeat the comments I made earlier, but I think there are some areas where there's a little bit of spin in the numbers that have been presented. So I think, and I'm also confident that maybe I have more confidence than others that the legislature is going to come through with some kind of an allotment increase. And so I think as we balance all of the complex factors that go into this equation, I support a 2-cent VATRE. And then the second part of the motion would just give us some flexibility rather than being tied to the things that are only in the 2-cent option in the presentation. Specifically with some special ed issues and some other things, I just want to give the board and the administration an opportunity to go back and determine how those funds will be allocated if and when it passes.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton, for that clarification. Ms. Hannan.
So I had requested to speak based on the original motion made by Dr. Gilliam. Is that what's still open to the floor? Because I just heard a motion, an amended motion and a second. So
Right now, the motion to amend is pending in front of the board, and the board should discuss the motion to amend and then vote upon that. If the motion to amend fails, then the board would revert to the original motion. If the motion to amend were to pass, then the board would deliberate the motion as amended.
Just to clarify, right now, the discussion is regarding to the amendment. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
So to Mr. Hamilton, okay, well, since I have the floor, so I reject actually Mr. Hamilton's amendment with particular concern that the board then gets to allocate how the expenditures take place. I guess I'll stop my conversation there because, correct, I'm just addressing his amendment.
Yeah.
Okay. But we're going to loop back, hopefully, because I think that, well, I'm going to say why I reject it, is because when we look at our local tax rate comparison, and we are so low, and we look back at the history of how many districts have used their enrichment pennies, and there we sit not using ours, and we wonder why we rely on ESSER money and emergency relief money and hurricane money. It's because we haven't gone out and asked well, we did ask once, but I think we're going to do a much better bang-up job this time. I think that we need to fully understand that it's been a long time coming since this board stuck its neck out there to raise the tax rate. And so that's why I'm rejecting the 2 cent, because I think I think there are far more things we can do with the 5 cent to improve teacher retention, to value our employees, to deal with special ed, to figure out how we're going to address House Bill 3 with the requirements of officers or security on our elementary schools. 2 cents isn't going to do it. So I reject the amended motion. Thank you, Ms. Day.
Thank you, Ms. Hannon. I don't see any other, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President. On the differentiated pay scale, what was the cost for that? We couldn't achieve that with 2 cents, could we?
You are correct, sir. It would require $8.2 million in order to implement that over and above the $25 million that the 2 cent VATRE would raise.
So that would put us in roughly around 3.5 cents, 4 cents we would need to achieve that plan?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And I go back to what Trustee Malone had said about thinking outside of the box and trying to figure out how we can retain and attract teachers. And when I saw that plan and when I learned that that plan isn't just for district employees, it's for anybody that is at that level, so that would help us draw people back into the district. So at a 2 cent option, it looks like that barely puts us back on the playing field. And then you turn around, and while I'm not as optimistic as Trustee Hamilton that the legislature is going to do anything, because they really haven't. But you never know. But if they do something, then that means they're going to do something for every other school district. So then we're still back at square one. So I don't think I can't support 2 cents. I think we're in the people business, and at the end of the day, these teachers and staff, we're out there and we're losing teachers, we're losing staff. We need people. Not only we need good people, and this is a really good. I was very surprised, and I was pleasantly surprised when I saw that plan, and that's what thinking outside of the box does. And if 5 cents isn't an option for some of the trustees, I would urge you to at least consider the 4 cent option. I think that gets us in a really good spot. And then anything that the state legislature does, obviously icing on the cake on top of that. And then we go back and we look at, the armed uniform security at the elementary schools. It's another thing, everybody's seen the news, the first week of school, what we had in a couple of the high schools. So, and then bus driver shortage. But yeah, that's I'll defer the rest of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Ms. Malone.
Sure, thank you, Madam President. All right, so I've noticed my hair's been falling out some, and I really think, I'm truthful, it's been coming out, and I think that this VAT is part of VATRE, and looking at all of the information and trying to make sense and heads and tails of all of it is part of the reason, beyond the charter, that my hair's been coming out. So I'm going to be glad when this sucker's over, first of all. Okay, I have a few questions, Mr. Gwynn, on information that we discussed. Particularly, let's just take, and we're looking at comparative data and information on, let's just say principals, and I'm going to use one example, and we'll say high schools in Fort Bend ISD. and we look at where we rank in the columns. And so I'm just going to ask you, sir, what's our average pay for a high school, and I think you have this data readily available. Average pay in Fort Bend ISD for a high school principal.
So for a high school principal, the average pay is I'm sorry, my screen is not as large sitting here as it is at my desk.
Don't you love those big monitors?
Yes. The average pay for a high school principal is $154,000.
Okay. And if I recall when I said it, I mean, not when you were sharing this information with me, 151 is our low?
That is in the low range, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm going to use another example. So, but according to our minimum range is 132 on the slides when we're looking at comparative districts.
132, and I'm going to look next door to me, to the chief human. I believe
132, 593 is what's on the chart.
I believe that is our starting rate for a high school principal, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. And with an elementary school principal, what's the average pay? Or how about this, what's our lowest?
So I do have that information, but the one thing that I would state before saying it publicly is that if you are that person, you will be able to readily identify yourself if I say it out loud. So I can.
Okay, let's just do average then.
Okay. The average is 116.
Okay. But let's just ask this question then. According to this chart, the pay starts at 96,993, but in practice, do we have any elementary schools under six figures?
No, ma'am, there is not.
Okay. And if I keep going, I don't know if y'all are catching the concern I have with this, but it's very difficult with some of the data. And so there's a key part of, Mr. Hamilton, can you remind me the second part, whatever you were saying? I didn't quite understand or hear the motion, but then you said something about.
Yeah, so the second part of the motion is if the VATRE passes, the funds will be assessed and allocated by the board. And so the goal behind that statement was just so that we could come back. So I think there are some things that I would consider priority one that are only in the 5-cent option. And so rather than commit us to only the things that are in the 2-cent list, we could have an opportunity to reframe those.
And council, that's something we would have to do after the VATRE passes?
The allocation, as the motion is drafted, or the motion is presented, would occur after the VATRE passes, correct?
If I may add too, so this evening, what you are considering is only the tax rate. And so any proposal as it relates to compensation or any of these other items will have to come back to the board for final approval. So as an example, if the board were to move forward with the 5-cent option and staff would have to bring forward a recommendation on a contract, as an example, for armed security. Similarly, if we wanted to increase funding or increase spending on special education, we would have to bring that back as an amendment for board consideration. And again, the largest component of this obviously is the compensation package. That will also have to come back for board consideration. And so this evening, if based on the tax rate level that you approve, staff would bring back recommendations that are constrained to the dollar amount that tax rate would generate.
So then, can you help me understand on the public tax rate hearing earlier, page 19? There's a 2, 3, 4, and 5 cent option, and within those options, there are bullets identifying how the funds would be spent. So help me understand I keep using the word effective today. How is effective, yada, yada, yada. How is that effectively going to work if we've gone to market and we told the public one thing and then we go and do something different? Do you see what I'm saying? I hear what you're saying in theory, but to me, that's a bait and switch. If we were to go and approve a tax rate tonight for whether it's 2, 3, 4, and 5, and change later, unless we have a caveat and an informed public that that's the intent.
And that would have to become part of the messaging as well. And as I'm saying this too, keep in mind too, we do have someone here specifically on the PR side, Ms. Ronna Johnson, that can also potentially help address some of these questions as it relates to the messaging side of this. But again, from a staff perspective, I think that what you're saying is correct. If the implication is, if you approve 5 cents, that this list of bulleted items is what we would focus on. And it would be teacher compensation, officer compensation, et cetera. And so if there were specific direction from the board that some of that perhaps needed to change, that could come tonight and be incorporated into the message. But again, from a PR perspective and the messaging side, I can just tell you what you're approving tonight is the tax rate. There is still the option to bring forward to the board each of these items for future consideration that you would have to approve or disapprove, and we would have to bring it back in a form that the board ultimately agrees, comes to consensus on as it relates to each item.
Okay, I understand that we'd have to come to the board and the board would have to approve it because it's over 50K. The challenge I have is the ethics. So like if I don't know if y'all can see, but just in case people aren't sure what I'm talking about.
Can you put it back up on the slide, please, so that everyone can see? That would be great. Thank you.
Because I'll just say, for me, one of the non-negotiables is special education. That is a non-negotiable that I believe, regardless whether it's 2, 3, 4, or 5 cents, funds need to be allocated towards special education. Same thing with teacher compensation, non-negotiable. I don't know how everyone feels here, and golly, previously, and I was on Zoom when this happened, but I recalled wanting to discuss and try to, be ahead of the 8 ball with it regarding the board being privy to the survey and how things were being rolled out. And this was all presented to us. And I know we talked about the last time being able to like puzzle piece and stuff, which effectively we didn't puzzle piece though. As a group, we were just presented the information and the options. And I know we didn't have time, and that's the thing with everything, guys. Heck, that was the thing with the charter earlier. Everything is time, and trying to get 7 people or 8 people on the same page with everything is, it's a dilemma, and it's very difficult, and TOMA makes that even harder. But when I'm looking at all of this and if I'm understanding correctly, and I want to make sure I understand this correctly, Mr. Brush, regarding the motion that we are currently deliberating, and that is a motion for 2 cents. However, you're saying, if I understood this correctly, that column 1, I'm going to call it column 1, 2 cent option, is not necessarily how we would allocate funds, that it would come back to the board? And funding that would then be allocated by the board. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think the intention of the second part of the motion was the same thing that Mr. Nguyen just stated, that the way that it would proceed, but it's just making clear that we're not committing to the items in the 2 cent option list, because for the same reason you stated, that I agree that I have priority 1 items that are not in the 2 cent box. Mm-hmm. And so I would like the 2 cent option to pass with the opportunity for us to revisit which items are included in the 2 cent bucket, if you will.
Remember, we're setting the tax rate. We're setting just the tax rate.
Dr. Gilliam? Oh,
I'm going to keep thinking while y'all.
okay, yeah, thank you, Ms. Malone. Dr. Gilliam?
I'm still all over the place. I would like to ask, Mr. Hamilton, can you tell me this? You said I have priorities?
So I think, I think multiple of us have priorities that are not in the 2-cent option. So yes, in me making the motion, it was speaking for myself. And so, but for me, specifically the additional $3 million to identify and serve SPED students that's on the screen right now, to me, that needs to be a priority one expenditure, not an item that's only in the option if we go the full 5 cents. And so I think if we rework our priorities, so to speak, then so teacher pay is obviously priority one, making sure that we stay competitive there. And I think we need to find a way to make sure that $3 million for special ed students takes priority within the $25 million that we would be allocating if the VATRE passes.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. And please remember, we're a team. And so I too believe in special education, and I'm hearing a lot of what certain people want, or certain board members. So the way that I understood this, Mr. Bassett, can you explain, or are we picking and choosing here? The way that I understood it, here's what we can get for 2 cents, and here's what we can get for 3 cents as the priorities that you all have with Dr. Whitback, that you all chose that those were our priorities at this time, along with the board. That's the way that I understood it. Could you clarify for me?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. I mean, the $25 million as the basic compensation plan is what we feel is essential for recruiting and retaining positions across the board. If we go lower and we cut out numbers for, if we reduce the amounts for APs or principals or directors and above, the funding for that isn't enough to cover, what's needed for special ed or for the armed security guards. I mean, those numbers together, Brian, I'm not sure what or how much that would impact a teacher pay, for example. And so anyway, we think that it's, we don't want to single ourselves out, I don't think, in terms of being the only district around that doesn't give the same general pay increase to its leaders. I think there's some real potential problems with that. Not to mention the fact that I don't think those dollars are material enough to address some of the priorities that the board's talking about.
So it is, in my opinion, that's how we moved from 2 cent to 3 cent to 4 cent, because, okay, we need this, and then we're going to need this also. And all of these things, in my view, are priorities. But what happened was that it was sort of like, let me give you a little bit here, this is what this is going to cost, and if we add this, then we can do this. So we start adding on to it, but it was and correct me if I'm wrong, it was number one to make sure our teachers were going to be taken care of. That's how we started. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's the lion's share. I mean, teachers, if you look back at the pie charts, teachers and the counselors, nurses, all those in that group make up 54% of the staff. Into the original, I think they would get 62 or 64% of the compensation allocation. If the differentiated pay scale was adopted, they would go up as high as 70%, which is, obviously.
And that was that wonderful pay scale that was
differentiated pay scale.
awesome and amazing that that I wanted. Let me not talk for everybody. And so because I also, and I believe that I believe that everyone can shake their head. Everyone wants more. Let me speak for me. I definitely want more for special education also, but there are many other things here. I hate to put those out. And that comes in the 4 cent option or the 5 cent option. And it's right in front of me, but I'd like for you to say it.
That comes under the 4 and 5 cent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gideon. Ms. Jones.
Okay, I'm for the 2-cent options. Let's just be clear here. I'm for teacher raises, but how we're going about doing that can be misleading. One thing that we're talking about priorities, and our priorities are this. We need to pay our teachers. We need to pay our paras. We need to pay our bus drivers. We need to take care of our special education. And we need armed guards. We need these things, okay? Now, with 2 cents, we're sitting here saying that we can't fund special education, but I'm looking at this chart where it says allocation of 2 cent VAT-RE by category, and they're allocating $1.63 million towards administrators and business professionals. Why couldn't that go towards special education? See, special education should have been on the radar at the beginning, whether you were doing 2 cents or 5 cents. So it's not a matter of whether or not we can't afford special education. We just prefer something else over special education. So having said that, I'm standing by my second motion for that 2 cent. And we can reallocate some funds to fund special education rather than saying, well, we need more money. That throwing money at we are not being fiscally responsible here. And that's what I'm looking at.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. So right now, I just want to remind everyone we are still discussing about the amendment. So do I have any other comments is regarding to the amendment? Ms. Malone.
All right, just in processing mode here. All right, so if it's $3 million for special ed, remind me again how much it is for raises for teachers.
The teacher component is, and I'm sorry, this screen's a little small from here, so I'm going to go to the next. The teacher component is 16.15 million.
No, to do their step and pay to get them up. I thought it was a lot less than that.
So, I'm sorry, when you.
I thought it was,
So to do a teacher with a differentiated pay scale, is that what you're asking? Or just a?
no, the differentiated pay scale is the 8.5, right?
Correct.
Okay, differentiated is 8.5, but increasing our teacher compensation, I thought it was roughly not 16.
So the teachers, librarians, nurses, and counselor, the cost of going up by $2,500 to bring us to $62,000 in the market with teachers, that's the 16.15 million that you're seeing there.
It's together with teachers, librarians, nurse, and counselors. Are you asking just teacher or? I don't, do we have the data just, I think Ms. Malone is asking for the teachers. I think one of the meetings you provided, but I don't remember.
So you're saying
Just the teachers.
excluding the counselors and the librarians? I'm sorry, the counselors and the nurses?
Here's the deal. For me, even on the 5 cent option, I don't really know how to say this without just saying it.
Say it.
And sometimes y'all all know I don't really like to always say what I'm thinking, but
Just say it.
all right, I'm just going to say it. So for example, Ms. Jones mentioned the armed guards and having them on campus. I believe that's priority as well, especially in the today's age and the unfortunate mental status of many people in the world. That's heartbreaking, and the truth and the reality we live in. Here's one thing, though, that to me is missing on this chart. I want to know how you're going to prevent entrance of weapons. How do you stop it? An armed guard, in my view, can tend to it. And I know that we have the see something, share something. I also know that there's stuff in the marketplace that can detect weapons. And as much as I believe in compensating people, and again, we're all different here, right? I'm just saying safety's at the forefront for me when it comes to that. And I support having officers on campus. I think I support having officers on campus. I'm just not sure that that's enough. I think the plight that we're in is not just a plight of the school district, it's the plight of the public as well. And here's a question that I have in my mind is, okay, so 5 cents, as much as it may not be dramatic to some homeowners, it is for somebody who's on a fixed income. And it also could be definitely a big difference to a business owner who employs the residents in Fort Bend County. And so I'm drastically struggling because I'm going to continue just kind of telling it like it is for me. I wish I could turn the clock back. And I wish we would have been involved in the questions that went out to the public regarding the survey. I wish, and I expressed this, I wish there would have been a thought exchange where the community could weigh in and tell us what their priorities are so that we could hit the nail on the head. And maybe for some folks, we are hitting the nail on the head, but from other folks, I'm not. Actually, I know we're not necessarily hitting on the nail on the head for everybody. Just like anything, you're not going to, but you're going to do the best you can. And I do believe that you guys have worked significantly hard on this. I think the biggest struggle I have is what we've marketed to the public. And this is what happened with the last one. And I'm pretty convinced that if we say, yes, let's go forward with this, and we vote for whichever option, that this is what we are committed to. And frankly, I'm not in support of the way all of these are allocated. And so for that, I appreciate Mr. Hamilton's recommendation of coming back to the board if, and that's the thing, it's like, what's the will of the board though? If the will of the board is supporting teacher compensation or is what's the will of the board? And that's what's going through my mind because I don't know what each one of you wants. All I know is the will of what administration has presented us.
So, thank you, Ms. Malone. Dr. Wayback, I think Dr. Wayback has some comments.
The conversation thus far is disturbing. The administration was asked to bring a recommendation. Okay, and Ms. Day, you please confirm to the public and the board how many times you told me we need to bring a recommendation.
I did because I think that's really, to be honest, Dr. Wayback, I don't want to say it, but I do believe that's the job for the administration.
Thank you. And so what we did was we brought you options, and these are our best estimate of dollars based on cost for employees, based on knowing that our police officers are over $5,000 less paid than next door, and all of these factors. So we added those up. 2 cents equals 25 million. How much can we possibly get out of that? 3 cents equals 30 million. How much can we get out of that? And we went about that business. And so there's no spin on any numbers. It's simply, these are some possibilities that the board could consider. I have spoken many times to board members about making sausage, or if you had another way that you wanted to form it, that could be done. What I will say to you, and I know I hear very different views. I hear at least 3 board members saying, I feel strongly, with 5 and going the full amount. I hear other board members saying 2 cents and their reasoning. And then Ms. Day hasn't said it yet. What I would say to you as your superintendent, I strongly advise leaving people out. Leadership matters. Principals matter. Teachers stay in a school, 1, because they have a supportive principal, and 2, because they are comfortable and they like the team they work with. And that's often tied to the whole culture of the campus. Again, what the principal is responsible for. Principals are teachers that have worked their way up because they're motivated and they're goal-oriented. If we are saying in our district we do not value that, that is a very bad message. It is certainly up to the board to give it, but I will tell you, it's a very bad message. We do not want to be a district that you can't grow in and that you cannot develop into a strong leader, whether that's through curriculum, whether that's through technology, principalship, or whatever. So what I would say to you, it seems to me that you're very different in terms of your thoughts, and I would say to you, I would ask of you to look closely. I personally would ask for at least 4, because page 21 of that, would you please put that back up, Brian? The differentiated teacher pay is critical. And I want to say to you that 2 things that we must do. Top priority, provide a safe and caring environment. And second, a high-quality teacher. These items that the team put together have prioritized that. They have, so it is not just willy-nilly. It has been extensively time-consuming and very difficult. And maybe they're not perfect, and maybe everyone doesn't like every single thing in it, and that's fine. And there can be wiggle room. But we have given you a way here to say Fort Bend values its teachers, and we value the experience that our teachers come with. That we know those teachers with more experience. How many times have we talked about how hard it is to get experienced teachers in our Title I schools? We've talked about it on the dais. People have said, why don't we have more experience? Well, here's a way, okay, to value teachers with more experience, to want them to retain and to stay, and to recruit. So to me, if your top 2 reasons are safety and a caring environment and a strong quality teacher, then you look at these options and you would have to say, prioritize teacher salary and prioritize paying our police officers and supplying the armed guards that need to now be in the schools by mandate. Your 2 cents does not cover it. Even if you say you don't care about principals or leaders, it does not give you the money to cover the armed guards and special ed and anything else. So you can do the math. So that's why we land, I would say to you, 4. But if you can't agree as a board, then if you do 3, at least you have the armed security, but you have not done the differentiated teacher. And this right here is the bread and butter for Fort Bend ISD, page 21 right there. That's where we say we put our money where our mouth is, and it's in our teachers. So ultimately, this is the board's decision. The administration has done what it was asked to do. It has given you very clear options, but you cannot do it with 2 cents. And that's just the fact. Thank you, Ms. Day.
Thank you, Dr. Wayback. I would like to say a few things before I do a second round or third round, whatever it is. So first, I really want to, Dr. Wayback, I do believe, I want to clarify a couple of things. I think this board value the leadership in the district. I do believe. So if we look at the chart for the 2 cents, I think at the workshop I said I can 100% look at this data, because for this, the 2 cents will give us $25 million. And I did hear Ms. Malone's concern regarding to how to prioritize the fund. So first of all, I wanted to say this one, the $25 million here on this 2 cents includes everyone. Is that correct? Is that right? I think I asked that question at the workshop.
Yes, ma'am. This includes all staff.
Yes. So I do believe this board, first of all, I want to say this board really wanted to pay our teacher better. We want to pay our police officers, pay the bus drivers, custodians, and all that. So I wanted to say something regarding to this VATRE number. I think if you heard me make comments before, I strongly advocate for 2 cents. There's a couple of reasons, because I really wanted to pass. We already failed once. I really wanted it to pass. Because of this, we have this $25 million so we can pay the teachers, we can pay the bus drivers and police officers. And also, yes, we do know the inflation. I know we wanted to give everyone a raise, but the thing is, also I need to look at the people in the community. They also are struggling with this inflation. So for me, there's a challenge among, for example, I'm asking for people who are trying to make their ends meet every month to pay more money, to compensate someone don't have that financial struggle. That is my concern from day one. So I wanted to ask Ms. Garcia. I remember last board meeting, Ms. Garcia brought up the possibility the audit committee may bring a proposal for cost-saving audit. Ms. Garcia, can you confirm, is that still the plan? And also, do you have that?
So I will say that we talked about it on the committee, and I brought it up to Mr. Bassett, and I think that if we call for a VATRE, a cost savings audit would be very important to show the community that we're doing everything we can to look at it from multiple lenses. We've got staff beating it up every which way possible. So if folks here on the dais feel like people are fudging numbers, which I don't think we are, that's a really good opportunity for us to get really into an opportunity for somebody to come in and tell us, look, there's some things we can do. Now, when you look at it, there's probably some wiggle room here and there. I don't know how much. 2 cents is, when you look at the 2 cents here, that's only paying people. And I've been in staffing. I was in staffing for 11 years. And I get what Trustee Malone where she was going with how much the principals make on average. But also the question that I think folks forget to ask is, what is the turnover rate for the principals we have in Fort Bend ISD? Because when I look at it and I see principals with Ms. Hefkin at Oakland for years, and then she goes somewhere else, and she's now the principal over at Neo, and she's now retired, and we've got principals over, and they don't leave. They probably do make more than other principals in other districts on average, but because there's tenure here, and anytime you have to, in the HR world, anytime you have to roll out another position, it does cost money to do that. So there are additional costs with that. I want folks to be mindful of that. When you look at 2 cents, 2 cents is great. We're paying the teachers, we're paying staff, but then when you get right down to it, that's all we're doing. So if we're saying we want to prioritize special education and we want to prioritize security, where exactly are you going to get that money from out of this allocation bucket? So it's going to come from either the police officers, the bus drivers, the principals, the directors, and the directors is only $280,000, so that's not really going to get you anything for additional officers or additional special education. So, but the cost savings audit, getting back to that, It definitely would be beneficial. I don't think it would be done by the time the election rolls around, but at least the public knows that we're serious on the board, that we are oversight and we are trying to work with administration to make sure that we have an eye and we're trying to help where we can and find cost savings and be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. We're talking a difference between 2 and 4 cents, which is a difference of, on average, of a $370,000 home, $50. And that's what we're arguing over right now. The difference between $50 annually, $370,000 median home. Everybody's going to get at least, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited about getting a break on my taxes. I don't mind paying an extra $50 personally to get the 4 cents, to get that differentiated plan, to get more special education assistance, and to get the armed security guards, whether, and I also understood it to be, these are some of the things that we can do. Because I've had many conversations and I've been asked, and these are things that I've always said I would like to see. So that's just where, my understanding is that's where they're getting their information from, is you asked me and I told you this is what's on the PowerPoint based on stuff that you asked me. So you don't like the pool. This is some of the stuff that I think we all collectively said that we wanted. So we can change it, we can modify it, but 2 cents isn't going to cut it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Garcia. That was a pretty long answer to my question, but thank you, I appreciate that. So back to my point though, well, to be honest, I guess I don't really want to, I just want to say one thing. I don't feel Ms. Malone's comment is making any accusations, saying the data is not, it's, how do I manipulate it? But I think her point is, when you look at the chart, we use the 130, was that 132 or 133? I don't have the chart in front of me. For the high school principal, 132. But I think she just simply pointed out the extra pay is 150 something, 151. So I think that's what she was trying to say. Is that correct, Ms. Malone?
I'm merely saying that the way this data was presented is, for example, on that one, that we rank as number 7, according to our peer districts. But according to that scale, that'd be true if it were 132, but effectively, we're not paying our low rates on, frankly, any category, which honestly, guys, I support principals. I think they're key to the leadership and effectiveness of any campus. It's not that I don't support it or support them. I believe in our principals. It's just that the data, it was hard and it led me to have a lot of questions. And this isn't the only one where I'm like, wait a minute, I thought the low was this. How is it that every single one is 20,000 higher? That's a big difference. And percentage-wise, too. So it was just that. It's not, it's not that I don't support principals. I frankly do support principals. And whoever said fudge the data, I never said the word fudge either. That did not come from me. I merely asked for the difference and just stated that there was a difference from the scale versus what our reality is in our effective pay. That's all. Practice versus what the range is. And I want to go back on that, though, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Because I do want to ask a couple questions. And frankly, somebody was asking me, oh, what are you going to do? And the answer was, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I don't know if all y'all came in here knowing exactly what you're going to do. I didn't come in here knowing exactly what I'm doing. I wanted to talk to y'all and to listen and for us to find a meeting of the minds. And I'm genuinely trying to understand and want to support this district. But there's a couple questions that I have on the brain. And if, let's say we were to go with the 2 cent option, here's my question to you, Mr. Gwynn. Can we do the 8.5 million step pay and not do the other? Is that an option? Because the 8.5, does that cover everyone?
The roughly 8.2 million. The 8.2 million would apply only to those on the teacher scale. So it would exclude counselors and it would exclude nurses. But I think that's the question, right? So you're asking,
So what you're saying is that's exclusive for teachers and doesn't apply to anyone else?
for the differentiated step, that is correct. It's
Okay.
anyone on the teacher pay scale.
Okay.
And just if I can provide just a brief clarification on that. So why are we grouping teachers, counselors, nurses, and librarians together? So when House Bill 3 was passed during the 2019 legislative session, the state mandated when we give raises that we give at least a certain amount to teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses. And so typically when the state takes action to give mandatory raises, those classifications of employees are included together. And so for the purposes of if there is additional action on the part of the state outside of or based on an upcoming special session, we didn't want to do something that misaligned these groups. And so we've included them together for that purpose. However, nurses and counselors are not on the teacher scale. And so as you're seeing this, the reason we've categorized them the way we have is because that's typically how the state acts, and we want to make sure that we stay in alignment with any actions the state may take.
Okay, and on the force-in option that includes that, what latitude is there beyond what you have within that column? Meaning, is every dollar spent? Or is there room, like you mentioned that there's room where we could discuss, no, on the 4-cent column. I'm asking on the 4-cent column, is every dollar spent? Or is there wiggle room?
So the short answer to that question is no, there is not wiggle room. What we've attempted to do within each of these is to allocate the funds based on the revenues that we would generate. And so there may be and when I say a slight delta, we're talking about a couple, maybe $200,000 to $300,000. It would ultimately depend on the final valuation that we receive and what that total number from a revenue perspective comes in. We expect that a 4-cent VATRE would generate roughly $35 million in revenue. And you can see we have about $35.6 million allocated here. And so assuming all things come in as we've expected it, every single dollar that the VATRE generates would be allocated based on these categories.
Okay, and I guess that's where my struggle is, because if every single dollar is allocated towards these categories and we went for, let's just say, the 4-cent option, and I'm looking at the 5-cent column, and I believe that there are some priorities there. And you mentioned the board would be able to have that decide, then how do you go to the public? Does that make sense? And so maybe, Rana, this is for you. Here's my struggle. How are you going to go to the public with messaging if we have a board who hasn't who's not 100% committed to any one of these columns?
Well, I think, I was just looking at the Vader that you put out last year for 7.55 cents, and I'm looking through some of the materials, and I'm not seeing clear funding priorities, so that might be why we're having this conversation again a year later. From my perspective in terms of messaging, what we tested with the voters was really that 2-cent, 5-cent, so you'd have that spectrum of the ability to analyze what was in between 2 and 5. But when we go out to message that, we do have to be clear and transparent about what those funding priorities are. So I think I'm contemplating, as you guys are talking about this, if the math works out from what the administration has provided, that this is what it takes these 4 pennies to get these things, I don't know if I feel comfortable saying we're going to do 2 pennies and then we're going to do some conglomeration of this later. My focus usually on messaging, and you probably saw this with the bond, is being very clear. Very clear and transparent with the voter about this is what we intend to do. And as we all know, and with bonds, it's the same thing. Sometimes things change. There's natural disasters, there's inflation, there was COVID, and so a lot of districts struggled to complete the goals that they did in bonds before 2020. This is kind of the same thing. You're putting out your intention. This is what we propose to use the money for. And so I think that in considering whether it's 2, 3, 4, or 5 cents, that looking at this list to be able to determine those dollar amounts is important. And I was looking at what you put out last year. It was very detailed on how you plan to use the money almost for salaries at a leveled perspective. And so I think the differentiated chart gives us the ability to show that on the compensation. But my preference would be that there would be more clarity, I guess, and structure, because I don't know if you can take 5 cents of priorities and put them in 2 cents and then be able to explain the math. I mean, that's what we would just be saying. We're going to do some of these things, but we don't know what, and now we're putting out a message like last fall.
So I think that's the difficulty in the way I see it as well, because transparency is key, and I appreciate what you're saying about communicating to the voters. And while we're voting on a tax rate election, we're not just voting on the tax rate election, we're voting on one of these columns as it stands, because how else would you be able to message?
Yeah.
How else can you message and provide that clarity?
Well,
And so my question then is to Mr. Brush or Mr. Wilbanks, what other options do we have? If we were to pass the tax rate election, is this board then able to call a special session on how we would, prior to, because it hasn't come to the public, right? It's not going to come to the public until November. So if this board were then to find consensus on how those funds would be allocated, is there any possibility to meet and call a special, like, emergency session after calling for a tax rate election, or is that out of the cards due to?
So the deadline to call this election is midnight, an hour and 10 minutes away.
Wow. Right, I'm saying after the election, if we call the election, are we allowed to then, Mr. Gwynn mentioned earlier that we would be calling for the tax rate election tonight, and how we allocate, the board would determine at a later date, and we'd obviously have to vote. But to Rana's point, and what I agree with you on this, what we say and we communicate to the public, we got to follow through on. You can't just change your mind. So the question I have is with Mr. Hamilton's motion, where he said we'd come at the later date and determine the allocation, is it possible to meet after we've already called an election for whatever tax rate it would be and determine the allocation so that then messaging could be conveyed to the public and then the voters would have accurate communications that are within the intention of this board?
If I understand your question correctly, you're asking, can you set the amount tonight and come back, it have to be at least 72 hours from when you post, and establish those priorities? In theory, you can do that. Now, you remember, you're on a timeline now, right?
Yes, sir.
And so
Would be
you lose
emergency.
that time. I don't know that it fits the definition of emergency under statute.
Okay, fine. 72 hours to me is still.
Right.
So you're saying we could do that?
In theory, yes. You could come back and establish your priorities. Now, the potential for confusion and the potential for misunderstanding by the public rises dramatically. Because when people go back to look, what did you call for? What election did you call? They're going to come back to the vote you made for the election. And so ultimately, there's risk there.
If I can
Right,
add-
but if it creates consensus,
The present motion, the present amendment to the motion pending before the board is conditioned upon passage of a VATRE, and then still reserving to the board the ability to assess and allocate subsequent to the passage. So while Mr. Wilbanks was talking about the theoretical possibility, I would see a tension between doing that and the language of the currently pending proposed amendment to the motion.
I guess, Mr. Brush, what I'm getting at is if I were to make another amendment and include that language, that the board would come back for a special meeting to discuss and deliberate the allocation of funds regarding whatever tax rate that is.
So were that amendment to be accepted and functionally defeating the present amendment, then I think that would be a possibility.
Okay, so maybe the board, if y'all can kind of discuss your thoughts on that idea. And I know it's a creative approach, but I just want to find consensus because I think it's very important that we find something we can all agree on.
So, Mr. Malone, I just want to clarify, you wanted to amend the motion basically based on seeing if we vote on certain amount, and then you wanted the board coming back of like 72 hours or something to have a consensus on the priority for that amount before they can send out the messaging to the public. Is that correct? Is that my understanding correct?
Yes, ma'am, that would be correct.
Okay. So would you like to make the motion then?
No.
Okay.
I was asking if y'all wanted to continue weighing on the 2 cent and if this is something that would be viable, then yeah, I'd be happy to make a motion. I'm just trying to find, a creative approach on how we can come together, unified, and move forward.
So I guess we have right now, we have a motion right now by Mr. Hamilton. I figure if you wanted to make an amendment to his motion, you can make it, and then we can vote on it. I think that's the way we can know if we can pass that motion. Okay, Mr. Brush, so I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
There would have to be a motion to make a secondary amendment, which would have to be seconded, then debated. Then the secondary motion would have to pass, at which point, then we would be able to debate the motion as amended by the secondary motion.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Brush. So I guess, yeah.
All right, here goes nothing. So I agree that teacher step pay really does support our teachers, 100%. I also will say that I believe I truly value our educators. From every single, to me, an educator is not just a teacher in the classroom, guys. It's the janitor who talks to those kids about what they did that day, et cetera, all the way up, like for everyone, whole range, including the principal. What's this for?
Just passing it down.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'm going to take a stab at this motion with listening to Dr. Whitbeck and her suggestion, and I'm also going to point this out, and I don't know how the full board feels about this, but one thing I would love to see with regard to allocation is that there's more regarding safety and safety prevention beyond, if it's possible to fit it in when we do our allocation beyond an armed officer. And so I'm going to make this motion, and maybe it'll go, and maybe it won't. So I move to make a secondary amendment to adopt the tax rate of, where did that original one go? Of 0.9892 cents. Adopting the combined, or I move, how about this? I move to strike the word 0.962 and insert the word 0.9992 cents And I move to strike. Why are you looking at me crazy? That makes it 4 cents.
It's 5.
Oh, now I'm looking at, see, I'm tired too. I'm reading this from earlier in y'all's notes. I need it to be 0.98, right? 0.9892.
Which one you?
If you're wanting to get to a 4 cents, it
4
needs to be 0.9892.
Yes. Yeah, I just am reading notes from earlier of other people. My bad. And I'm trying to remember the language you said, Mr. Hamilton, about. Thank you for passing that down. This will help me tremendously.
Well, I can give you the.
All right, I move the board. I move the board make making a secondary amendment to the motion set at the tax rate of, and strike the word .962 to .9892 per $100 evaluation. And if the motion passes, that the board would meet within 1 week to allocate funding so that messaging can be developed for the community by the board.
I second.
I second. Oh, you already second. Sorry, I didn't hear. So we have a motion by Ms. Malone. Who seconded? I'm sorry.
Dr. Gilliam.
Second by Dr. Gilliam. Sorry. Do I have a discussion? Okay. Okay. Okay, oh, sorry. Miss Hannon. Okay, I'm sorry. Miss Hannon.
Okay, the first thing, I'm going to make this quick because now we have 1 hour. And what I have, and thank you to Sergeant Walton, you have the teacher pay scale in front of you. And I want to bring your attention, if you've never looked at the teacher pay scale, a teacher with 0 years experience, that means right now they're in the classroom, they have 9 days experience-ish, right? They make $59,500. And how do we celebrate the teachers who have stuck around for 20 years in this district? How do we celebrate them? They make $70,000. They have, in 20 years, their raise is $10,500. That is shameful. That is embarrassing to me. I have had my kid in this school district since kindergarten. She's in 12th grade, and she's got some teachers who they went to Dulles, and now they teach at Dulles. And those teachers deserve more. You know what? That whole, let's just do this the way it's always done. Hey, let's be innovative. I appreciate at least that we've got a motion for 4 cents on the floor. But I want you to look really, really hard at that teacher pay scale. And now I'm going to ask if staff will please put the tax impact slide back up. Because I hear folks talking about, I'm concerned about what is in people's pocketbooks, or the lack thereof, what they don't have. But the difference in, if we raise the tax rate this time by going to the voters, hopefully, with a VATRE, we didn't have this situation last time, where the 88th legislature has said the homestead exemption is going to give you a tax break, correct? We didn't have this. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So my mom and dad always taught me, because since I was 15, I worked at Take and Bake Pizza, and my hands smelled terrible because we didn't wear gloves then. And so when you got a raise, even if it was 25 cents, put that 25 cents away because it's going to help you later. And to me, so our taxpayers, including myself, we may not realize the full benefit that the legislature has bestowed on them. Doesn't this also have to go for a vote, the homestead exemption?
So and just to clarify, there's two components of this that are leading to that, and I'll be brief for the sake of your conversation. One is the homestead exemption increase from 40,000 to 100,000. The other is the additional compression of the tax rate. So both of those are playing to what you just indicated, that's reducing the tax rate.
Okay, so their tax burden is reduced. And all we would be doing with a 4 or 5 cent is we would get to realize some of that benefit. But we aren't, it's not like last time. It was sort of, here's zero and now you're below this, right? They're getting to go up and we're bringing them down a little bit. I'm not a finance person, but I can understand that this is different this time than last time. So I can't buy, and we're at the lowest tax rate we've ever been. I cannot buy a 2 cent. The other thing I want to address is I don't know if the 2 cent has to do with some people's very distaste for recapture. So if you could go to the next slide, please, with the options. So I know 3, 4, and 5, we have some recapture, but I would like Mr. Bassett to go back to his point about us realizing $14 million if we pass a tax rate. Can you talk to me about that? Because even though I've never had a problem with recapture, because I don't have a problem with recapture until the state has so much money that they're just sitting on and not handing that out to public schools who need it. But if you could speak to the $14 million that you addressed when these slides were up before, that would help, because maybe that would also help people understand even this $1.5 million that we have to pay back from the state. It sounds like we're going to be realizing more than the recapture, a lot more. So could you explain that, please?
Yes, ma'am. The state would be contributing $14 million for the 2 golden pennies. If we had all 5 of the copper pennies, each one would have recapture of 500,000. And so if you combined all 5, our net amount that we would receive from the state would be $12.5 million.
And help me understand, is that in addition to the total sum here with the pennies?
That's included. So that 12.5 million would be part of our overall $40 million.
Would be part of that.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I still think that even having to push back 1.5 million to the state for recapture is acceptable to me. And so the last thing I'm going to really implore and ask my colleagues to think about is that I did come in here and knew what I would vote for, because for the past month or more, staff has been providing me with information, and I have asked and they have given every time. Give me information, and they've given it to me. Do I like everything on this page? I don't. And the people on this board know that maybe I don't. But the truth is, I hear that Dr. Whitbeck and her staff are bringing to me the recommendation for a 5 cent option. I do not think it is this board's job to make the recommendations of what the most important things that we need to expend money on. That is the paid person's job. We vote, we look at which is what we're doing, but I have to, in this case, respect the 5 cent recommendation for a parent who has had their kid here, again, since she was in kindergarten and she's still here. I have lived in this community since I can't even remember, 93, and I am devoted to this community. And it breaks my heart every time when I look up there and I see that line and our teachers are at the very bottom. And it breaks my heart every time when I look at the numbers and I see how many kids, over almost 6,000, are leaving to go to charter schools. So I sound kind of like a big old grouch, but, and forgive me, but I implore this board to accept Dr. Whitbeck's recommendation of the 5 cents and consider all of this information that, or maybe I've asked for more information, but I think we all get the same information. Anyway, thank you, Ms. Day.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Ms.
staff.
Okay.
Appreciate your hard work, and thank you for answering all my questions for the past month and a half.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. Now, I just want to remind everyone, right now it's 11:10. I don't really want to wait until 12 o'clock, so let's prepare to vote at 11:50, so, or before.
11:50? 11:50
but we have, I'm sorry?
11:15 or 11:50?
50. I mean, so I saw Ms. Jones waiting, but Dr. Wayback, you want to?
Well, is the motion on the floor 4 cents
Yeah.
made by Ms. Malone?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And that is a motion to amend the amendment,
Amend the amendment.
original motion. So there are a sequence of votes that will need to be taken.
Yeah, we need to vote on 1, 2, 3.
First and foremost would be a vote on the secondary amendment.
And I would just say from the administration, as I just mentioned, compromise is part of the collaboration. And we understand that it's the trepidation that board members have and politically. And we get that, and I respect that. So, this to me, the 4 cents, we can make it work because we can get the differentiated staffing and we can also get the security. And those are the 2 top things. So, and then if we need to make sausage with the board and tweak, fine, we can make that happen. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Dr. Wayback, because that's super important for everyone to hear. But Dr. Wayback, I wanted to ask you a question. So if the motion passes at 4 cents, do you think the team can work together? And because I hear the concern from 5 cents to 4 cents is a special ad, do you think there's a way? How can we? I mean, can the team do this before the messaging? I still feel. Do we still need that special called meeting to change that? Okay. That's the emotion. So, but do you think the team will be willing to work together with the board to make that happen?
I absolutely think our team can work together with the board. Absolutely. But do keep in mind that the 5 cent has $3 million for special ed. There's not going to be that much money because unless you take other humongous things out, like paying the police officers or, the original teacher recommendations. So we just have to look and see, what we can create. But yes, we would sit and work together, of course.
Okay, thank you for that. So, do we have any comments before are we ready to vote? Or you have, Ms. Hannan?
So I just want to clarify. So again, I appreciate the other motion that at least, it gets us up to 4 cents. But my concern is, in a week, I didn't write your motion down. In a week, we're gonna make some sausage, and I don't want this differentiated teacher pay step to leave. So that's my trepidation with the caveat that you put on your motion.
So she said, I'll just say with the intent with that motion, I don't know if you heard prior to me, because it's late, but
I
prior to
did
me saying that was important as well.
Right.
And the teacher step pay, the reason why going with the 4 cents is what I heard her say earlier on is we could achieve pretty much everything we needed to achieve within that.
So
I think that there's probably a shared understanding with that.
Our board counsel. So the motion as it's made, to me, feels very broad. And does that, when we come back in a week's time,
Ms. Hannon, it was made that we would come back within a week. So it could be.
within a week. Okay, we have
7 days.
72 hours. So we are going to then vote on what the VATRE is going to cover? Is that your intent?
So the intent was compromise. So when I'm listening to everyone around and hearing everything, I'm trying to find collaboration. And so the intent was to collaborate beyond what I heard administration say, what I heard Dr. Whitbeck said, what I heard you say, what I know my priorities are as well. And listening to Ms. Day and Mr. Hamilton and Ms. Jones, Dr. Gill, everyone, and trying to find common ground. And so the intent is, I believe, and you may not, believe that, and that's okay if you want to vote against it. I hope you support it. But I genuinely believe we can find common ground. I don't think we're that far off.
Okay.
The reality was when we had the...
I just want to make sure
when we
that
had the...
when what I'm voting on, if I vote for your motion, that we do not lose the differentiated teacher step. But I can't...
So, Ms. Hannon, I cannot speak for anyone but myself, but I will say I find the differentiated teacher step extraordinarily attractive. But I'm only one vote. But what I guess I'm getting at is that we went to, and we had the workshop. The workshop was 2 hours, and then boom, we left. And frankly, I struggled with that because I thought we were going to be doing the puzzle pieces and whatnot. Instead, I did the puzzle pieces by myself on an Excel document. And I wanted to hear what kind of puzzle pieces you came up with, or she did, or whoever, and that we are all doing what we believe is best for this district and best for kids in Fort Bend ISD moving forward. And I genuinely believe differentiated pay is what's best.
I do too, and that's why I'm concerned with the motion, and I hate to make this messier than it is, but I would like it with the caveat that the differentiated teacher pay remains in the 4 cents.
So I'm not willing to withdraw. I trust looking around the room that everyone, I would say that I trust that we'll find common ground, and that my goal in that is just, at least with the motion, that we find common ground and that we would allocate these funds and have honest, genuine discussion like we are now to figure out how it would be allocated, doing what's best in driving the district forward.
Ms. Jones.
Okay, so I just want to clarify something. So basically, if we come to a common ground of 4 cent, 2 cent, 3 cent, 3.5 cent, however way you want to do it, we can agree on that. But how the funds are going to be allocated, we're going to a separate meeting, basically, and we decide what we can do working within that given budget. Am I correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay, that's my understanding too. I had some comments for Trustee Hannon. I wish I could, if it were a perfect world, this is really isn't, I mean, this is what we can give our teachers, okay? Whether it's 4 cent, 2 cent, this is what we can give our police officers. But this really isn't for teachers. It helps, but this is not a living wage, especially when you have taxes going up, insurance going up, homeowners insurance. I'm thinking about the teachers who are actually homeowners, that not only they're going to be paying more, actually they're going to be paying back what they earned in taxes when you really look at it. And as a board, I just think about, yes, the administration, they gave us our recommendation, but that's why we're here. We're here to do what we do best, and that's disagree and debate and find a common ground for not just our teachers, not our administrators, but for our kids, and we got to put them at the forefront. Our kids need teachers. Our teachers need a living wage. This is not a living wage, but it's something to start. Having said that, I want all of us to be a 7-0 vote on a 4 cent, because it's a start. for a living wage. That we can come together and say, okay, we have some money, we may not agree on all of the money, but we can at least work together saying how the funds are supposed to be allocated. And that's what I'm asking the board to do. If we all can just go with the 7-0 and say, this is just a start, and we may not like it, we may not agree, but this is what's best for kids, and this is what's best for our teachers, and this is what's best for our district. I'm not a fan of increased taxes. I'm not a fan of any of this, but I'll go with it. So I'm asking the board to go with a 7-0 vote for 4 cents. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Trustee Jones, for the spirit behind that comment. But does anybody want to tell me how much money we voted to approve in spending tonight?
Oh, Lord.
We haven't approved any.
The consent agenda.
Not in this, earlier.
Okay. I don't know.
But the number I have is $75.8 million. And I get that a lot of that is bond funds.
The lion's share is bond funds.
Yes. But we're turning around and saying that we need a tax increase of $40 million because we don't have $8.2 million to find for the teacher step pay scale, which I love the teacher step pay scale. I want us to be a district that highly values teachers, and we show that with the way we pay them and jumping out in front. I just have some issues with the way all of this has played out, and so I appreciate your requests, but it's amusing to me that it was stated that there's no spin in these numbers. I gave 3 examples earlier. If there's no spin in these numbers, then the administration presented a budget to us that did not give teachers or staff a raise. So why did the administration do that? And part of the answer is because we did give them a step, and we did do a retention and recruitment bonus. And so if you're defending the budget, you say one thing, and if you're trying to pass a Vader, you say another thing.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Ms. Jones, do you still?
I hear what you're saying, Trustee Hamilton, but at the end of the day, it's for the kids. It's about the kids, and they need teachers. We can't be worrying about who's at the school, well, I don't have kids in the district, but I will have grandkids in the district, and I'm just thinking about if my child's school is under fire or somebody's there, who's there? Who's there to protect them? You know, and you have kids, Kristen has kids, and at the end of the day, it's not, we're talking about an adult issue, but at the end of the day, it hurts kids. But this helps kids. And I'm asking you, Trustee Hamilton, do it for the kids.
So thank you, Ms. Jones.
May I ask that the motion be repeated?
Yes, Ms. Malone, can you repeat the motion, please?
I put it away, so hold on.
Okay.
Some of it was
It's
off the cuff.
11:20.
And to be clear, this would be the secondary motion to amend the motion to amend.
Yeah.
No.
No.
I want to say one thing to address you, Mr. Hamilton. I hear you on what you're, referring to, and I think that, and I understand where you're coming from. I also want to acknowledge that we just passed the Finance and Budget Charter, and that we will be moving forward with that committee's priorities and providing information to the board where we'll have the opportunity to work with admin, taking a deeper dive, and hopefully creating greater confidence. I hope you'll have greater confidence moving forward. And so I'm telling you where I stand. Where I stand with this is that charter was a big deal for me moving forward with this vote now. And I appreciate where you're at, or anyone else or folks in the community who've asked questions as well. I get it, and I understand. And so I do believe that we'll be able to work together, because I don't think that there's necessarily deliberate intention on any part. But like when I mentioned earlier, the difference between the range of pay from the bottom to what we actually do in practice, it makes it hard to understand the data and make decisions when there is that kind of variance. Although it may be real, and that really is the range, but in practice, that's just not our application. So I just want to say I appreciate where you're coming from, and I understand that, and that, again, to the board, the intention here with this secondary amendment was trying to find common ground and work together to collaborate to do what's best. So with that, I need to locate very quickly the paper that I stuffed away. I saw Dr. Gilliam packing up. I said, you know what, I'll
Ms.
do
Day,
it too.
While she's looking at that, can I mention a word of caution that I'd just like to point out that I think the board needs to understand? If you look at this slide, this is the 4 penny slide, and it has a differentiated pay, and it also has the safety and security. Those are the big rocks, okay, that are on there. And so if you're going to look for a way to figure out how to add, $3 million for special education, what I'm worried about is that, even if you add the business, admin and business professional category, 1.6 million, and Brian can say who's in there, because I think you'd be surprised who's in there. If you add the principals and ADs and the directors and above, if you give those groups nothing, that's $2.68 million, okay? So you'd be in a situation, if you're going to give a partial raise, let's say half of that, that's not going to be enough to cover that. And so how you're going to work through that when everybody is talking about, well, we want the W, and that means that we need to have strong employee turnout. We need to have strong employee turnout. And so, pulling out of those, I think is going to be very difficult. I guess I'd just like to ask one question. What is the hesitancy between 4 pennies and 5 pennies? What is the hesitancy? Is it because we don't think it would pass? Is that the hesitancy? I'm just asking.
I'll answer. Okay.
Ms. Jones?
Let's kind of think about 4 pennies versus 5 pennies. So we just asked the taxpayers for $1.2 billion for bond. And then you come back and say, hey, we need $40 million more. I think about how when my kids ask me for money, and I've already given you $100, given them $100, and you come back and say, well, can I have 95 more? And I'm like, I already gave you $100. What happened to it? So I'm looking at it from a point of view of, no, I'm not going to give you the $95, but I am going to give you something. And so it's not that whether or not we don't have confidence that it's going to pass at 5 or even at 2, because I'm sure Ms. Johnson is going to work her magic. But at the same time, it's like how it looks to the voters as if, wait a minute, we just we just gave you $1.2 billion, and you're coming back and asking for 40 more. That's what it looks like. And that's just a conversation I had with my neighbor of saying, because she asked me straight up, so how much more is that going to be in my mortgage? How much more am I going to have to pay in my mortgage? Yeah. And so it goes back to, they don't see what we see. They don't see all the slides. All they see is that tax bill when it comes. And, the taxes are going up. Plus my homeowner's insurance has doubled. So that's the language they understand, rather than it looks like we're fighting over 5 cents, 2 cents, 3 cents. We're talking about pennies, but we're actually, it translates into millions. And when it translates into millions, it translates into dollars when it comes to that tax bill or that mortgage bill. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Brian, can you tell me who are in those categories for the professionals and admin? Admin and business professionals, the 1.6 million?
Yes, so the admin and business professionals will include positions such as the LSSPs, the licensed school psychologists, diagnosticians, speech language pathologists. It also includes assistant directors, coordinators, art facilitators, and positions like that.
So can I ask, I'm going to ask, since you asked that, I'm going to say something and then ask a couple questions back, and then we can move forward.
I'm keeping an eye on the clock because right now we have a secondary motion and then we have to keep going back. So it take a few votes. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
If I could add one thing to what Mr. Bassett said related to the tax rate, because what you said, Ms. Jones, did resonate. And I would recall, yes, sometimes the child comes and asks for funding and you say no because you just got something. But recall, we did do a VATRE a year ago.
Yes.
And at that point, we asked for 7.55 cents. It has been brought down in conjunction with $40 million in reductions that have been done over 2 years. I would say, and I think that we've said this before, the last thing that I wanted to say to Dr. Whitbeck is we needed to do a VATRE. The last thing that she wanted to bring to the board was a VATRE.
Right.
We have intentionally tried to keep this at a level that, one, is fiscally responsible, but two, addresses some of the dire needs that we have today. And I think that you heard from us loud and clear. Teacher compensation, if we do the differentiated pay, will make up 70% of this total compensation package. 70% of the $35 million from the VATRE will go to teachers. And then you have another roughly, I think that number is 8%, that will be going to classroom aides. 78% of this is staying in schools. And so I would say that, yes, we have given thoughtful consideration to what you've asked. And so is this a difficult ask of the board? Yes, it is. It is very difficult to sit in this chair and say to you, we need to do this. But we've deliberated on this internally. We fought internally. And what we're sharing with you tonight is the best work that we feel that we have. And is it perfect? No. But I don't think that anything that we do will ever be perfect. But we try to do what will serve the students of this district best.
Okay, sorry, sleepy. So you asked about the penny difference, and it's, why it's just a penny. So to a business, it's not just a penny. They do not get homestead, and they employ our people. Just like Fort Bend ISD is the largest employer here, we now have Amazon, we have other, I'm not going to go necessarily lift all the businesses, but I can think of many of them, and taxes matter. And one of the reasons that a lot of businesses are coming to Texas or that come to Sugar Land or even Missouri City, they'll give them tax abatement programs to entice them to come here to employ our people. We need our people to have jobs. And frankly, when we're talking about people and we're saying our teachers need a living wage, well, so do our parents. So do the grandparents, and so do the aunts and uncles that reside here in Fort Bend. Ms. Hannon mentioned earlier, she's resided here since 1993. Well, me too, guys. Born and raised here, and am a lifelong resident of Fort Bend County. And I care about our people, and I care about our teachers and our staff, but I also care about the neighbors down the street and everyone else. And frankly, it's been a hard season, a really hard season, because there are people who are struggling with going to the grocery store, and that makes a difference. And there is also a county election coming and all sorts of other things that are in the pipeline. And so, Mr. Bassett, that's why when I'm hearing the board talk about 2 cents, and that's where they were at, frankly, I could vote for that. But if I'm hearing my fellow trustees, and I strongly believe, and I've communicated this before, I believe a 7-0 vote is huge to the success of this election. Genuinely believe that. I don't think a split vote is very good. And so when I say common ground, that's why. Because I think that just like when I mentioned the charter, that this isn't to come, get in your sandbox and just get in the weeds or whatever some folks want to call it. It's to work together. And so To me, this is intentionality with working together for the common good of the district
Ms. Day.
and for the people.
Ms. Day, it's 11:32. I call for the question.
I'll second.
Thank you. So let's vote.
What are we voting on? Be clear on what we're voting on.
We are voting on, I clarified, we are voting on the 4 cents with the meeting. We'll schedule a special meeting within 1 week. And with the help with the team to identify the priorities in that 4 cents before we send the messaging out to the community. That's what we're voting on. So let's vote. Motion passes 6-1.
President Day, the board's now voted to amend the amendment. The board should now proceed to take a vote on whether or not the original motion should be amended with this amended amendment. So there's an extra wrinkle.
So right now, we need to vote on the motion with the secondary amendment.
The motion to amend was amended, and so the vote you just took amended the proposed amendment, and now you all will vote as to whether or not to amend the pending main motion, at which point you will then need to vote on the motion as amended.
So, Ms. Day, can we ask Mr. Brush just to kind of say that in layman's terms? Are we
Yeah.
now voting on the actual 4 cent?
No.
No.
Just read,
You're
just
voting
read
to
the,
amend the main motion.
can you
the
just
ma-
read
the
the
vice-
amendment as we're voting on it? I think reading the language of the amendment that we're voting on would be the best way to.
It would essentially be the language that was just read to the
Yes.
board or
All
explained
right,
to the board.
Yeah.
So
I move
Can I
that
have a motion, please? I mean, we already have a motion.
Motion's already
We already
pending.
have a motion there. So we're just voting on the motion with the amendment
2 cent, 5 cent.
for
Give me the number. 2 cent or 5 cent?
What?
4 cents.
4
4
cents.
cent. Okay. Okay.
Are we clear what we are
So we
voting
amended
on?
this 2 cent motion with the 4 cent motion. So we're going to amend the 5 cent motion with the 4 cent motion.
Yes.
Correct.
Correct. So we have an original motion is 5 cents. Now we're amending to the 4 cents with the meeting, with the,
Okay, let's do it.
are we clear? No, okay. Mr. Brush, can you clarify? We still have,
I just want to make 100% sure what I'm voting on.
You are now voting, okay, so the original motion that was made
That's
was
what I
5
was saying.
cents.
Yes.
All of this debate has been the process of amending that motion to work towards amendments. The board took a vote to amend through a secondary amendment, the proposed amendment. Now the board has crafted its amendment and has to vote whether or not you all are going to amend the original 5 cent motion to make it a 4 cent motion with the special called meeting within a week to assess and allocate priorities.
Okay, thank you.
are we clear, Miss? Okay. Do we have any questions? No. Let's vote. Motion passes 6-1.
For purposes of clarity, there's now now amended main motion before the board is a motion to allocate, to set at the 4 cent rate with a special called meeting within a week to assess and set priorities in the event that the VATRE is to pass.
Thank you, Ms. Brush. Is there anyone, we all clear with this? Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Nope, no. You've got a
Oh, we
motion
haven't- Oh,
pending.
my God.
You've got
Actually, put
a
it into
motion
effect.
pending.
We got to put it to
This is your vote. This is the vote. Provided it
Well, that's
passes,
the
it sets the
This is the
the
vote.
tax rate. So
Okay.
you all need to take a vote on
All right.
this.
Let's vote.
I thought we need a motion.
We need a motion?
Motion's already pending.
Motion already
All the
made.
sequence has been amending it.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's vote. track of how many times we need to vote on it. Still vote. Okay. So, motion passes 6-1. So we are officially caught a VATRE at 4 cents. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I
yes.
move to adjourn.
The meeting is adjourned at 11:38 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.